The ground trembled beneath their feet. As the swarm approached, chaos erupted, not just among the dwarves, but among the garden's creatures as well. Ants, ground beetles, bees, flies, ladybugs, wolf spiders, butterflies, some familiar, some strange, fled in droves. They ran, crawled, buzzed, and skittered away from the oncoming terror. Even monsters that would normally hunt each other now shared one goal: survival. A single red-striped predator mosquito was a trivial threat, but thousands? A death sentence. 10 bites were enough to paralyze a dwarf for an hour. In the face of a bloodthirsty legion, nothing in the Figaro garden, no beast, no person, no team, could stand its ground. There was no time to fight, no chance to plan. The only option was to run. Follow the ants. Lux shouted. They might be retreating to their nest. We can take shelter there. The others didn't hesitate. Colette, Maddie, Helen, and even a reluctant Robin followed Lux's lead, dashing after the ant column veering southeast through the undergrowth. The shrieks of dying creatures echoed all around them, horrid cries of insects being consumed mid-flight, their wings torn and blood-drained. Despite their size, dwarves were among the fastest runners in all of Elysium. In times like these, they could even outrun beastkin. 15 tense minutes later, the group arrived at a large mound marked by busy patrolling ant guards. Other dwarves, thinking the same thing, converged with them. Lux acted fast. Diablo, skeleton warrior, summon, he commanded. The 2 undead appeared at his sides. Colette's group gave him confused looks, but he ignored them, focusing on the guard ants. To his surprise, the ants didn't attack, or even object. They allowed the dwarves, the undead, and the other insect refugees to enter the nest without issue. As the last of the ants returned, the guards sealed the entrance. Everyone inside exhaled as if waking from a nightmare. Damn, thought I was done for, Andy muttered, pressing a hand to his chest. Axel nodded grimly. If those mosquitoes hadn't shown up, that graduating party would have taken down the red-eyed terror mantis. Colette and the others murmured in agreement, but Lux wasn't listening. He had already sat down, cross-legged, eyes closed, deep in concentration. Within his mind, he entered a colorless world, his mental link with Diablo. He watched through the skeleton's hollow gaze as a cluster of mosquitoes flew by. They didn't even slow down. Not a single one gave Diablo a glance. Of course, a skeleton had no blood, no scent, no warmth. To the swarm, he didn't exist. A smile crept on Lux's face. It worked. Search for the red-eyed terror mantis, Lux whispered. His undead servants obeyed, moving like silent sentinels through the desolate battlefield. Through Diablo's vision, Lux saw the devastation firsthand. Carcasses of dried, hollowed-out insects littered the earth. The swarm had left a path of carnage behind. No dwarf bodies. Not yet. That small mercy soothed Lux's nerves. Suddenly, a piercing shriek rang out. Go, Lux ordered. Diablo rushed toward the sound. The buzz of wings filled the air. The sight that greeted him was surreal. Giant flowers trampled in a mulch, shredded mosquito husks strewn like confetti, and at the center, the red-eyed terror mantis. Wounded, surrounded, swarmed. The beast's exoskeleton deflected most mosquito bites, but the swarm persisted, probing its defenses, searching for weakness. Then, with a screech of frustration, the mantis unfurled its wings and beat them furiously, sending a shockwave that blasted the smaller mosquitoes away. That was when they arrived. Among the dispersed swarm, a dozen hulking figures appeared, larger, darker, more terrifying. Obsidian-spiked mosquitoes. Lux recognized them from the Elysium Compendium. Rank 1 monsters, with piercing bloodsuckers strong enough to crack even the hardened carapace of the mantis. The creature froze, wounded, exhausted. Its berserker rage had faded minutes ago. Blood seeped from a long gash on its chest, courtesy of the spearman from earlier. Desperation glinted in its red eyes as it clutched the wound with its bladed claws. Then it fled. The obsidian mosquitoes surged forward in pursuit, followed closely by the red-striped swarm. They would not let their prize escape. Diablo and the skeleton warrior trailed the chase from a distance, unseen, unnoticed. The pursuit tore through Figaro Garden for 10 long minutes before the mantis, wings faltering, crashed into a massive flower and tumbled into the undergrowth. It struggled to stand, leaning against a vine-wrapped stalk, its blades raised for one final stand. It wouldn't run again. It would fight. The obsidian mosquitoes didn't strike immediately. Instead, the red-striped swarm surged forward again, wave after wave, as if softening the beast before the final blow. Lux watched silently through Diablo's eyes. A creature once feared, once peerless, now about to be consumed. And in the shadows, he plotted his next move. "Big brother, what are you doing?" Colette asked, blinking up at Lux. "Are you tired from running?" Lux opened his eyes and offered a tired but reassuring smile. "A little. Let's rest here for now. The mosquito swarm is still active outside. I'm using Diablo to scout the area. Once it's safe, we'll return to Leaf Village." "Okay." Colette nodded cheerfully, trusting his judgment completely. Lux closed his eyes once more, deepening his connection with his named creature. Through Diablo's eyes, he watched the brutal scene unfold. The battle had reached a fever pitch. The obsidian mosquitoes, far more intelligent and deadly than their lesser kin, were using tactics. They sent wave after wave of red-striped mosquitoes to harass and weaken the red-eyed Terramantis. Their venom worked silently, stacking, spreading, until the mighty beast's strength began to falter. Even though it had cleaved through hundreds of its assailants, the constant drain wore it down. Its movement slowed. Its defenses weakened. Then came a killing blow. The obsidian mosquitoes struck as soon as the mantis dropped to one knee, embedding their razor-sharp proboscises into exposed flesh. The monster shrieked one final time, a cry filled with rage, pain, and unwillingness, before collapsing in the blood-soaked garden. Lux watched as the obsidian mosquitoes fed. Their translucent abdomens pulsed and glowed, slowly turning crimson with the alpha beast's high-quality blood. It was like watching creatures level up, their strength visibly rising with every drop they drank. Eventually, with a chorus of low buzzing, the obsidian mosquitoes turned northward and vanished into the sky, followed by their swarm. Lux waited in silence. Only after confirming the entire swarm had gone did he give Diablo the order to approach the corpse. The once proud apex predator now lay lifeless, its body dry and hollow, drained of all blood. Lux felt no pity, only excitement. "Drag it back," he ordered. With surprising ease, Diablo and the skeleton warrior gripped the desiccated corpse and began dragging it across the broken garden floor toward the ant nest. Since there was no longer any blood weighing it down, the corpse was light enough for the two undead to haul without struggle. When they arrived, the ants opened the entrance again, perhaps out of recognition, or maybe gratitude for returning with one less threat to the garden. Lux emerged from the tunnel, eyes lighting up at the sight. Colette and the other dwarves followed behind, and gasped in collective awe. "Be big brother, isn't that the red-eyed Terramantis?" Colette exclaimed, pointing at the massive corpse. "Yes," Lux replied casually. "The mosquitoes finished it off. I had my undead bring it back." The half-elf couldn't stop the smug grin from tugging at his lips. He'd struck gold. In truth, Lux knew the mosquitoes never would have dared challenge the mantis if it hadn't already been injured. But luck was a part of survival, and today luck was on his side. The surrounding dwarves stared with wide eyes and barely concealed envy. They knew what a prize this was. The terror mantis' bladed claws could be reforged into pseudo-unique weapons. Its exoskeleton was a material coveted by armorers, light, strong, and resistant to elemental damage. And the crown jewel, its beast core, an item that not only granted valuable stat points, but a chance to inherit one of its powerful abilities, Fury Slash, Gust, or Berserk, skills that remained relevant even into the late apostle ranks. Eyes burned with silent greed. Lux didn't miss it. He reached into his satchel and pulled out a silver ring, his grandmother's parting gift. The enchanted beast ring, capable of storing up to 10 monster corpses of any size. It had one restriction. It couldn't store live creatures, but otherwise, it was a treasure beyond value for any adventurer. Placing his hand on the mantis corpse, he activated the ring. With a flash of silver light, the giant insect vanished, stored neatly within the ring. Luck smiled. No need to argue. No need to fight. He had secured the prize without shedding a single drop of blood. Grandma Vera had once told him, "In troubled waters, clever fishermen cast their nets." He hadn't slain the beast. He hadn't orchestrated the battle, but he had been clever enough to claim the spoils. And in the end, wasn't that what mattered? Still, a flicker of guilt brushed his conscience. He hadn't forgotten the graduating party that had been battling the mantis before the mosquito swarm arrived. But he shook the feeling away. He hadn't stolen their kill. The mosquitoes had. He just picked up what they'd left behind. Anyone else in his position would have done the same. Or so he told himself. Unfortunately, his victory wouldn't remain private for long. News spread like wildfire in Leaf Village. Word of Lux dragging back the red-eyed Terramantis corpse reached every corner of the settlement, and soon it reached the ears of the dwarf party who had nearly died fighting it. Lux could already feel the headache brewing. Claiming the prize had been easy. Dealing with the aftermath would be something else.
Hey, welcome to Firescale Audiobooks. If you enjoy our audiobooks, please consider subscribing to the channel. Also, feel free to share your review in the comments section below.
In the plaza of the Leaf Village, Lux stood still as he faced the group of 6 that fought against the red-eyed Terramantis. Their leader, Frederick, had his arms crossed over his chest as he looked up at the half-elf who was taller than him. "I heard that you brought back the corpse of the red-eyed Terramantis after it was killed by the red-striped predator mosquitoes. Is this true?" Frederick asked. "Yes," Lux answered. "However, the ones that dealt the killing blows were the dozens of obsidian mosquitoes, which were all rank 1 monsters." Frederick nodded his head in acknowledgement. "I know that you were not in the wrong, and simply took advantage of the situation, but it still didn't sit well with us. We can only stay here in Leaf Village for a little more than 4 days, but the red-eyed Terramantis might not spawn again before we leave this place. You can keep the beast core if you like, but we need the Terramantis bladed claws and its exoskeleton. Can you give this to us as a sign of friendship? And if I refuse?" Lux asked. He didn't mind giving them the Terramantis bladed claws and exoskeleton because he was sure that he could farm these items before he left the Leaf Village. However, the hateful glares that Frederick's party members were giving him, which made it seem as if he was someone that had killed their family members, were ticking him off. "Huh? You dare refuse?" the shield warrior of the group shouted. "We are being civilized with you, even though you stole our prey. If you are really an upstanding individual, you should hand the beast corpse over to us along with an apology." "That's right. Augustus is right. The Terramantis is rightfully ours. You thief. Give us back what is rightfully ours." Although Frederick didn't say anything, he still didn't stop his party members from voicing their complaints. His gaze remained calm as he just stared at Lux, waiting for his answer. Because of the commotion that had happened in the Figaro Gardens, some of the dwarves who were in Leaf Village turned to look at the disturbance in the plaza. Soon a crowd formed and watched this scene with great interest. Dwarves were known to be a rowdy race, especially when it came to drinking. They were also not afraid of a brawl, so the other races had learned not to tick off the stubborn dwarves, who were known to raise their war hammers at the first sign of conflict. "How about you buy them from me?" Lux asked. "I'll give you a 50% discount on the market price." "How about it?" Before Frederick could give his reply, the shield warrior, Augustus, immediately raised a ruckus. "You got guts, I'll give you that," Augustus shouted with sneer. "Selling something that originally belonged to us? Is this how half-elves operate? Bastard! Scum! Thief!" The dwarves in the crowd that had encircled them were starting to murmur to each other. Colette's group had also arrived at the scene and looked at the half-elf and Frederick with frowns on their faces. "Frederick, are you bullying my big brother?" Colette immediately stepped forward and stood between Lux and the party leader of the Shadow Tempest with her arms crossed over her chest. "Although you were the ones that fought against the Terramantis, the ones that killed it were the mosquitoes, meaning it no longer belonged to any of you. How dare you gang up on Big Brother like this?" "Oi, little girl from the Golden Slayer family, it is best if you stay out of this." Augustus didn't back down as he glared at Colette. Both of them were children of ducal families in Solais. Although their territories were far from each other, the world of Elysium allowed the dwarves from Solais to appear in the dwarven lands ruled by the dwarven kings. This allowed these families to get to know each other and form strong connections even though their territories were far apart. "HMP, you think you can scare me, you pig?" Colette shot back. "Come, I'll smash your face with my mace." Lux hurriedly grabbed the little girl who had already taken out her weapon and was raring to fight against the shield warrior who was looking down at her in disdain. Clearly, Colette wasn't a match for the shield warrior, but she still made her stance known because she couldn't just sit and watch on the side as Lux got bullied by other dwarves. "Calm down, Colette," Lux said as he tried to pacify the adorable girl whose cheeks were puffed up like a hamster. Deep inside, he felt very touched because the other dwarves in the crowd were looking at him as if he was their common enemy. After spending some time with Colette and the others, Lux had almost forgotten that he was the only half-elf in this beginner village that was filled with dwarves. In a conflict between two races, it was only normal for every race to back their own. "How do you want to settle this?" Lux asked Frederick, who had kept his silence from the start of the conflict. Frederick gazed at him with a serious expression as he unsheathed his sword. "A duel. If we win, you will give us the Terror Mantis bladed claws and exoskeleton. And if I win?" Lux asked. Frederick didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked at his party members to see if they had other opinions. All of them nodded their heads at the same time. Actually, he had already told his party about his plan to duel Lux if the negotiations didn't turn out the way they wanted. Naturally, since this was a duel, they also needed to give something in return to make it fair in front of everyone. "A favor," Frederick replied. "We will owe you one favor that you can ask of us when you meet us again in the future." According to his grandma, dwarves were known to honor their promises. This was why, when dealing with other races, most people would use dwarves as intermediaries in negotiations. They knew that the dwarves would uphold their part of the bargain. "A favor? What if I ask you to explore a dungeon with me, and I get all the loot? You're still willing to do that favor?" "We are dwarves. We will honor our word without fail." The dwarves who were watching from the side all nodded their heads in acknowledgement of Frederick's words. "Fine," Lux said as he patted Colette's head. "Since you want a duel, I will give you one. What are the rules?" Frederick smiled. "All you need to do is defeat me." "And me," Augustus interjected. "I also have a say in this. So you need to defeat me too." Frederick and Augustus were both apostles now, which meant that among the dwarf children in Leaf Village, they were the strongest. They also did an investigation about Lux's history and background and found out that he had only recently arrived in the beginner's village. Since that was the case, there was no possible way for Lux to win against them in a one-on-one battle. After all, they were stronger than him. At least, this was what they believed, so they decided to go with a duel to make it look fair to everyone. Also, they were technically on the moral high ground, so no one would bat an eye and call them bullies. "Big brother, you can't beat them." Colette grabbed Lux's hand and looked up at him. "They're already apostles. They're way stronger than you." Lux smiled as he crouched down and whispered something in her ear. "Don't worry. I fought the Dark Draugr, remember? I can handle them just fine." Colette's eyes widened in shock because she had almost forgotten about Lux's bodyguard, Diablo. Although the skeleton wasn't as strong as an apostle, a 2-versus-1 battle would still prove difficult for someone that had just become an apostle. "Okay." Colette nodded as she returned to where her party members were. "Don't lose to them, big brother." Lux gave her a thumbs up as he stood up. He knew that the majority of the dwarves didn't like him, but that was fine. Duels that were held in town were quite safe because there was a universal law that prevented deaths from happening. This was one of the safeguards that the god of games, Ariel, had made to settle disputes over disagreements that might lead to brawl. Of course, both parties must accept the duel for this feature to work. Anyone who started a fight in any of the villages, towns, and cities without declaring a duel will be treated as a criminal and captured by the guards that patrolled these territories. Frederick declared a duel invitation directed to Lux, and almost immediately, a small orb of light appeared in front of him. The young swordsman pricked his fingertip with a dagger and dropped a drop of his blood on the floating orb to signal his intention to start the duel. After receiving his blood, the orb flew towards Lux. Summoning Oathbreaker, Lux did the same and dropped his blood on the orb, signaling his agreement to the duel. "I recognize this duel," a voice filled with divinity said. "The fight will begin in 30 seconds. Make your preparations." A countdown timer appeared on the surface of the orb, signaling that the duel was about to start. Lux equipped his relentless warrior armor, which made Frederick and Augustus arch their eyebrows. They had not seen this set of armor before. When the countdown reached 10 seconds, Lux pointed Oathbreaker towards Frederick and smiled. "Don't get surprised when you lose, okay?" Lux said with confidence. "I won't be surprised," Frederick replied as he pointed his own weapon at Lux. "That's because I won't lose." Duel start. As soon as the glowing white orb declared the start of the duel, both fighters swiftly clashed against each other. They exchanged exactly 3 strikes before backing away, as they appraised the ability of their opponent. "How can this be?" Frederick was shocked after exchanging blows with Lux. "He's almost as strong as me." Just like everyone else, the leader of the Shadow Tempest thought that since he had already stepped into the apostle rank, the battle would easily end in his favor. However, after gauging the strength of his enemy, he realized that although he was still stronger than Lux, the gap between them wasn't that big. "As expected, I can fight him head-on." Lux smiled as he scanned the dwarf in front of him. "This kid needs to be taught a lesson." The half-elf stomped his right foot on the ground, preparing to charge at his opponent. However, before he could even take another step, he felt a magical fluctuation coming from Frederick's left hand, seemingly aimed at him. "Stone bullet!" Frederick shouted as a fist-sized stone flew towards Lux, which forced the latter to dodge to the side at the last second. Having his attacking stance broken, the half-elf had no choice but to evade the barrage of stone bullets that Frederick fired in his direction. "Crap, he is a magic swordsman." Lux cursed internally as he was left with no other option but to equip Dawn to block one of the stone bullets that he was unable to dodge. A resounding metallic sound spread across the plaza as Lux skidded a few meters away from where he stood. "Sorry I underestimated you earlier," Frederick announced as more magic circles appeared around him. "I will now fight you seriously, so be prepared." Just before Frederick could finish his words, Lux picked a random rock on the ground and threw it at Frederick to stop his chanting. "Stone bullet!" Lux shouted. Frederick tilted his body to the side to dodge Lux's unexpected attack. This also interrupted him from casting the spell Stone Bullet Barrage, which was a machine gun version of Stone Bullet, firing bullets continuously at a rapid pace. "You're not the only one who can cast magic," Lux declared as he pointed his thumb at his chest. "I can do it too." The lips of the dwarves watching the duel twitched as they looked at the half-elf, who was feeling proud of himself. "Bruh, you just picked up a rock and threw it. That's not how magic works. Aren't you feeling embarrassed for yourself?" That was the general summary of everyone's collective thoughts in the plaza. Colette and her party members, on the other hand, covered their faces in embarrassment, except Robin. He only glanced at his party mates and purposefully took a few steps back as if telling the other dwarves that he didn't know any of them. Frederick shrugged off Lux's words and decided to close the gap between them. He only used a ranged attack earlier to test and see if his enemy had any long-range spells that could be used against him. Of course, he already knew that Lux was capable of summoning the undead thanks to the dwarves that were on the site today. They all said that it was how he retrieved the body of the alpha monster. The only thing that confused Frederick was that the other party wasn't using any of his summons. Although he wasn't afraid of the other party's summon monster, the lack of it made Frederick think that his opponent wasn't taking him seriously. The two fighters once again clashed against each other at close range. This time, each of their strikes sent sparks flying in the air. "Tempest War Art, first form," Frederick shouted. "Kaiser Sword Art, second form," Lux declared. "Whirlwind Slash. Crescent Slash." A powerful gust of wind erupted at the center of the plaza, creating a thick dust cloud which blocked everyone's views from the two combatants. However, Lux and Frederick didn't falter and unleashed several lethal sword strikes that could seriously injure their opponent. Within the dust cloud, the sound of weapons clashing could be heard. Several flashes of light could also be seen as both fighters fought toe-to-toe at point-blank range. Both combatants were losing their health points at a rapid pace every time their attacks grazed each other. With one powerful slash, Lux sent Frederick a few meters away from him, after the dwarf had blocked his attack. What Lux didn't know was that the leader of the Shadow Tempest had planned this all along. He used the strike of Lux's slash to gain momentum in order to distance himself from his opponent. Switching his grip on his weapon, Frederick stabbed his sword to the ground and shouted, "Stone spikes!" Lux's sixth sense kicked in, prompting the half-elf to summon his skeleton warrior in order to deal with the dwarf's unexpected move. Several 2-meter spikes jutted out of the ground around where Lux had initially been standing a moment ago, piercing their target from all directions. As the dust cloud settled, Frederick saw the skeleton warrior's body collapse in front of him, but the half-elf was nowhere to be found. Augustus, who used his detection skill, immediately located Lux and shouted to warn his leader where the enemy was. "Frederick, above you!" Augustus hollered. Unfortunately, it was already too late. The skeleton warrior had propelled Lux high up in the air before the earth spikes hit it. This allowed the half-elf not only to escape the attack, but also initiate a counter-attack of his own. Kaiser Sword, Art 4th Form. Lux pulled his sword back in order to prepare his family's special attack that he had practiced while jumping off the tree on their property. He had practiced this move so many times when he was 12 years old, to the point that he fainted every 1 out of 3 attempts. Now that he was no longer worried about fainting, Lux unleashed the attack that had made his grandma Vera spank his bum numerous times for repeating this move over and over again until he fainted. Phoenix Descent. A screeching sound that was similar to that of a phoenix spread across the plaza as Lux's sword shone brightly. The crowd watched as the half-elf brushed through the dwarf's body and skidded across the ground with his sword at his side. Phoenix's Descent was the only attack that his grandma Vera had taught him that could be used while he was mid-air. It was also an attack that put great stress on the body due to the difficulty of its execution. But the current Lux was now strong enough to execute this move without fail. Frederick knelt on the ground, clutching his chest with his hand. He didn't expect that not only would someone survive his earth spikes, but also manage to counterattack against him. Although they didn't actually receive any injuries when dual mode was activated, they could still feel the pain of each attack. Lux's last strike made the dwarf feel as if his body was sliced in two. Duel over. Winner Lux. The orb of light announced the victor of the duel before fading away. Colette, who intently watched the battle, immediately ran towards Lux and jumped into his arms. The half-elf stored his weapon and caught the ever-lively little girl with both hands and swung her around and around, making Colette shout in joy. The dwarves stared at the half-elf in disbelief because they hadn't expected this outcome. As soon as the dust cloud settled, the battle had also come to an end. Augustus clenched his fist because he couldn't believe that Frederick had lost against the half-elf. Now that his leader had lost the battle, it was now his turn to fight. "You did well, half-elf," Augustus said as he stepped forward. "Now it's my turn. Don't worry. I'll give you a few minutes to rest." Lux put Colette down on the ground as he looked at the shield warrior, who had a serious expression on his face. "There's no need to rest," Lux said. "I don't want to waste time. Let's just duel now." This time, Lux was the one that initiated the duel and summoned the orb of light. After giving it a drop of his blood, the orb flew towards Augustus. "Although I'm not as proficient as Frederick in fighting, I am confident in my defense," Augustus thought as he dropped a drop of his blood on the orb of light, signaling his acceptance to Lux's challenge. "No matter what kind of attack he makes, I can block them all. I recognize this duel," a voice filled with divinity said. "The fight will begin in 30 seconds. Make your preparations." Augustus smirked at Lux, and the latter smirked back at him. When the timer ended, Augustus raised his shield and held his ground. As a shield warrior who specialized in defense, he had decided to use the counterattack strategy on Lux, believing that he would be the last one standing between the two of them. However, the smile on the dwarf's face stiffened when Lux raised his hand and summoned Diablo and his skeleton warrior to fight by his side. He had completely forgotten that his opponent was a necromancer who didn't need to fight one-on-one battles with him. Augustus had equipped his full-plate armor that covered his entire body. He couldn't afford to lose, so he decided to go all out and prove to the half-elf that he was a tough cookie to crack. Diablo summoned the forest wolf, making it a 4-versus-1 battle. Even so, Augustus wasn't worried. In his eyes, the only threat was Lux. Once the other party fell, the others would follow, so he decided to focus all of his attention on the half-elf. Lux charged at the shield warrior as he brandished Oathbreaker to check how tough the little dwarf was. After executing Slash, a metallic ring reverberated in the surroundings after Augustus successfully blocked his attack. Diablo, the skeleton warrior, and the forest wolf also took this opportunity to attack the shield warrior from all sides. Aside from the shield in his right hand, the dwarf also had a peculiar-looking short sword in his left hand, which he used to block Diablo's strike. For some reason, Augustus' instinct told him that Diablo was a creature he couldn't afford to look down on. After successfully blocking Lux's and Diablo's attack, the forest wolf's jaws clamped down on the shield warrior's head. At the same time, the skeleton warrior slashed at the dwarf's body. The forest wolf's teeth weren't able to penetrate through the helmet it had bitten on. The skeleton warrior was no different as its attack didn't even put a dent on Augustus' armor. One mighty roar suddenly sounded from the shield warrior, causing Lux and his subordinates to get blown a few meters away. Augustus unleashed his AoE skill, Shield Warrior's Roar, which had a knockback effect. Although it didn't deal great damage, it was effective when it came to pushing enemies away, especially when the user was getting mobbed. No matter what you do, you can't pierce my defense, Augustus declared. Lux smiled as he took a fighting stance. We'll see about that. This was the first time that the half-elf had seen a shield warrior in action, so he was quite curious about its abilities. From what he could tell, the forest wolf and the skeleton warrior practically did no damage to Augustus because of his full-plate armor. Lux was sure that this armor was something that couldn't be obtained from Leaf Village, so there was only one explanation. It was an armor that was given to the dwarf before he entered Elysium. Seeing that Augustus focused on blocking his attacks, Lux knew that there was only one tactic he could use in order to breach the dwarf's solid defenses. Lux took a fighting stance, and the sword in his hand glowed as he prepared to unleash one of his family sword arts. Kaiser Sword Art First Form. Lux shouted as he charged at the shield warrior who had already raised a shield up to meet him. Piercing the heavens. Augustus shifted his body in order to deflect Lux's attack and weaken its momentum. However, just before he could properly block the half-elf's attack, a moan of pain and pleasure escaped his lips. Diablo had positioned himself behind the dwarf and stabbed Augustus' bum. Although the dwarf was wearing a full-plate armor that covered his entire body, Diablo's attack dealt ethereal damage. It was an elemental damage that was similar to a spiritual attack that ignored all defenses. Diablo's attack had penetrated Augustus' weak spot, which made the latter cry out in pain and pleasure. Lux didn't continue his attack because the dwarf had already collapsed on the ground, with his hands covering his backside. I can see, Augustus said as he rolled on the ground towards his party members. Duel over. Winner, Lux. All the aspiring shield warriors, who were watching the battle, unconsciously covered their backside. For some reason, they could feel Augustus' pain. All of them shuddered as they looked at Diablo, who was looking at his sword in a weird manner. Augustus had already unequipped his plate armor and returned to his normal attire. Beads of sweat could be seen in his forehead as he endured the pain that persisted in his backside. It was at that moment when a black shadow covered his body. The shield warrior looked up only to see Diablo looking down on him. This made Augustus' body unconsciously shudder as he backed away while shielding his backside with both hands. The battle is already over, Augustus stated in shame and embarrassment. What do you want? Diablo ignored him and simply walked toward the panicking dwarf who was frantically hiding behind Frederick. Without another word, Diablo reached out to touch Augustus' robe and did the unthinkable. To everyone's surprise, the skeleton who was wearing a black armor used the shield warrior's robes to wipe its sword. Although it was hard to tell the facial expression on the skeleton's face, everyone could vaguely feel the trace of disgust in Diablo's face as he wiped Tranquility's tip zealously. Lux didn't know if he should laugh or cry at his named creature's actions. Just like everyone else, he was also caught off guard by Diablo's act, which showed that it was a very intelligent creature. After making sure that his weapon was now clean, Diablo patted Augusta's head before walking towards its master, Lux. The half-elf knew that he had to defuse the situation, so he decided to settle things in a peaceful manner. "That was a good fight," Lux said with a smile. "Although we all started off on the wrong foot, everything can be settled if we all sit down and talk in a civilized manner. Since you want the bladed claw and the exoskeleton, I am willing to sell it to your party at a 90% discount of the market price. You can buy the bladed claws for 5 gold coins and the exoskeleton for 3 gold coins. How does that sound?" Frederick knew that Lux was trying to settle things peacefully, so he readily agreed to his condition. Although they still had to pay a total of 8 gold coins, it was already a very low price considering that these materials could be used to craft a high-quality weapon and set of armor. "You have a deal," Frederick said as he extended his hand for a handshake. Lux held the dwarf's hand and shook it firmly. For him, the Terra Mantis, bladed claws, and exoskeleton were not a big deal to give up. Anyway, he could simply hunt the Terra Mantises at his leisure when Diablo and his other summons achieved a higher rank. Making the dwarves his enemies for materials that he could hoard in the future was simply not worth it. This was why he decided to take a step back and give Frederick and the Shadow Tempest party a way to resolve the issue without escalating things. After the successful trade, Lux took Colette and her party members to the inn to eat. Robin politely declined, using the excuse that he still had things to do, and left without waiting for anyone's reply. Colette and the others watched him go with a sigh because they were used to Robin always doing things at his own pace. Lux didn't think much about it and herded the Golden Slayers off to eat and drink to their heart's content. In a house located inside Leaf Village, find any information that you can about the half-elf. Robin ordered the dwarves who were kneeling in front of him. "I want to know everything about him. Now go." "Yes, sir." All the dwarves left the house and headed in different directions. Since their master had given them an order, they would fulfill it to the best of their abilities. "Lux von Kaiser," Robin muttered. "Just how did you arrive here in the kingdom of Guelvin? Just what is your goal?" Robin was very wary of Lux because his father had warned him that associating with children from other races would just lead to trouble. Of course, he didn't believe this advice completely because he hadn't met any other races in the dwarven kingdom of Guelvin. But although he didn't know if other races could be trusted or not, he was still very curious about the half-elf who had suddenly appeared out of nowhere. "I'll find out your true colors soon," Robin said softly. "If you are a threat to this kingdom, I will make sure that you will never be heard from again." 3 days had passed since the duel between Lux and Shadow Tempest party. A commotion happened in the Figaro Gardens, which made all the dwarves leveling in the area abandon it completely. According to the report of those who managed to flee in time, the red-striped predator mosquitoes and the obsidian spite mosquitoes were regularly conducting swarm raids in the Figaro Gardens. Because of this, most of the dwarves decided to boycott the north zone of the beginner village in fear of getting themselves surrounded by thousands of blood-sucking mosquitoes. The Adventurers Guild had also issued a Class B extermination mission to clear the pests that were becoming a threat to the outer area of the beginner's village. The village chief, Sedwin, was also worried that if things continued to get out of hand, another monster outbreak would occur, and this time they would be fighting against swarms of mosquitoes that thirsted for blood. The elders of Leaf Village believed that the threat the mosquito swarm posed had even surpassed that of the undead army that had raided their village not long ago. Grandma Annie, the old woman that had fought alongside Lux during the monster outbreak, had a grim expression on her face as she voiced her opinion. "I think we need to stock more food in our underground shelter," Grandma Annie proposed. "Unlike the undead army, these mosquitoes can get past our defenses because they can fly. Also, the paralyzing effect of their bites can cause countless casualties on our side. It is best to not fight them, and just wait until they leave the village. Sedwin and the elders of the village nodded their heads. Fortunately, all the houses and other establishments of our village have underground basements, Sedwin said. If going to the shelter is impossible, hiding in the underground basement is also an option. As long as the mosquitoes don't see any live targets, they will leave on their own. One of the elders rubbed his beard as he made his concern known. Has there been any news from the stronghold of Noria? We sent someone to inform them of the current threat we are facing a day ago. We should have gotten an answer from them by this time. Sedwin sighed. I'm afraid the stronghold is busy right now. Our neighboring village, Lindau, was attacked by a notorious bandit group. The warriors of Noria are scouring the nearby areas to find their main camp, but the bastards are like slippery eels that couldn't get caught. It will take a while before they can spare us some manpower to handle this threat. Grandma Annie shook her head in disappointment after hearing the news, but there was nothing that they could do about it. They were not the only villages that were under the protection of the stronghold of Noria. Other people needed help from them as well, so they needed to handle the situation on their own for the time being. Tell the Adventurers Guild to issue an announcement to the villagers, as well as the foreigners, that going to the Figaro Garden is forbidden, Grandma Annie stated. Although it is impossible to close off the entire area, giving a warning to everyone should at least have enough effect. Everyone in the room nodded their heads as they concluded their meeting. They set out to do their assigned tasks to ensure that their village would not suffer many casualties if another monster outbreak were to happen. East Zone, Aspiration Plains. It's too bad. We can't go to the Figaro Gardens, Colette said. She was sitting on top of a carriage. I heard that there have already been 2 casualties due to the mosquitoes' mob strikes in the garden, Maddie commented from the side. It is better to stay away from that place for the time being. Helen, the cleric of the group, nodded. Let the adults handle this matter. This is something that is beyond our abilities. By the way, where is Big Brother? Helen had started to imitate Colette, calling Lux Big Brother as well. It didn't seem wrong, either, since he was the oldest and tallest in their party. Big Brother said that he still has other things to do, so he can't accompany us on this escort mission. Colette pouted. I wonder what he is up to. The Golden Slayer party had taken an escort mission to protect a merchant caravan from bandits and wild monsters. They were headed to a village called Lindau Village, which was one of the trade partners of Leaf Village within the territory of Noria. Robin, who was also seated in the carriage, had his arms crossed over his chest as he looked outside the window. The investigation about Lux's identity was not proceeding smoothly because they couldn't gather any information about how he appeared in Leaf Village. Although foreigners could visit the kingdom of Guelevin from their homeworld of Solais, all of them were dwarves. There had not been a single instance where a different race had appeared in the dwarven lands, which was why Lux's case was being investigated critically. Even the stronghold of Noria had been keeping an eye on the half-elf's movements through the men that they had stationed in Leaf Village. As Colette's party continued their journey, the half-elf who didn't accompany them was busy getting chummy with the ants inside the Figaro Garden. Using the Elysium Compendium as a translator, Lux communicated with the ants while he hid in their underground colony. He asked them of the latest news of what was happening inside the garden. According to the information he gathered, the number of obsidian spite mosquitoes was growing at a fast rate. This was due to them drinking the blood of stronger monsters as they terrorized the ecosystem that had lost their alpha beast. According to the Elysium Compendium, it would take a week for alpha monsters to spawn after they were killed. This prevented newly ranked apostle parties from hunting them indiscriminately. Also, the ants told him some information that made him frown. The dozen obsidian spite mosquitoes that had feasted on the red-eyed Terramantis had all evolved into iron-scaled torment mosquitoes, which were rank 2 monsters. In the beginner's area, the strongest monster was the field boss, Forest Wolf King, followed by the alpha monsters. The tiers below them were rank 1 and rank 2 monsters. For a party that had just arrived in the beginner's village, they could at most handle common monsters like horned rabbits, skeletons, ladybugs, and forest wolves. After they became stronger, they could then challenge rank 1 monsters. After they get used to fighting strong monsters, they could then challenge the rank 2 monsters, which would help them level up faster. This would also allow them to gain enough stat points in order to deal with the alpha monsters in each zone of the beginner's village. In the absence of the alpha monster, the current big boss of the Figaro Garden were now the mosquitoes. No creature within it would dare to poke their noses out while these bloodsuckers were becoming more and more active in their territory. While Lux was chatting with the ants about mundane things, Diablo gave him a mental message which made the half-elf grin. I knew it, Lux thought as he gave an order to his named creature. This is the perfect opportunity to farm points. Lux was different from the Elysians and Solais. He didn't get experience points through killing monsters. He received points directly after absorbing beast cores and finishing quests. Right now, no dwarves were loitering in the Figaro Gardens, which made this the perfect spot for him to loot the goods that the mosquitoes left behind. The mosquitoes only cared about blood. They would immediately leave the body of their prey once all of its blood had been sucked out of its body. What did this mean? It meant that Lux could get beast cores without having to do anything. Diablo and the skeleton warrior would scout the areas where the mosquito swarm had just passed through. He got the information about the monster raids from the ants, who shared information through their colony. With such a powerful information network, which covered the entirety of the Figaro Garden, aiding him, Lux could collect beast cores without any problems, even if the mosquitoes were still active in the area. After all, Diablo and the skeleton warriors were just walking bones. As long as they didn't actively attack the mosquitoes, the swarm would just leave them alone. This created the perfect opportunity for Lux to collect beast cores and materials, which he could sell back in Leaf Village to earn coins. Of course, the ants also got some benefits from cooperating with Lux. They had agreed into a 70-30 split. 70% goes to the ants, while 30% goes to him. The Figaro Garden was a very big place, and Lux understood that he couldn't cover them all. This was why he had made the ants his business partners for a win-win scenario. His skeletons would scout the area to tell them if the coast was clear. After that, the ants would then send their scavenging parties to haul the dead bodies of the monsters back to their colonies. This partnership allowed the ants to safely stock up on their food sources without worrying about being targeted by the troublesome mosquitoes that could poke them to death. Lux would then get 30% of the beast cores of rank 1 and 2 monsters, as well as their materials after the ants had collected their bodies. Although the number of rank 1 and 2 monsters only number about a dozen or so, having 2 to 5 beast cores a day was something that Lux wouldn't dare pass up. A week had passed since Lux had holed himself up in the Figaro Garden, and he was still conducting his business with the ants. Although the Adventurers Guild had announced that going to the Figaro Gardens was forbidden, some stubborn dwarves would still secretly go there to kill monsters and collect herbs and other ingredients. Due to the decrease of people visiting the place, the dwarves didn't have much competition in herb collecting, monster killing, and foraging. This made them bolder, so most of them decided to go deeper inside the garden, which was a big mistake on their part. Run! A party of dwarves had ventured too deep in their exploration and came in contact with one of the mosquito swarms that were active in the area. The buzzing sounds of the mosquitoes' wings became louder as they closed their gap between the dwarves who were rich in blood. While they were running away, the healer of the party suddenly tripped on one of the roots of the plants that was on his way. "Help!" the healer cried out, but his party members only gave him a sidelong glance before running away. "No! Stay away!" the healer screamed as the mosquitoes pierced his body with their bloodsuckers. His blood-curdling screams spread across the garden, which scared those who heard it increase the pace of their running. The ranger of the party, a girl with long brown hair, had been enduring the sudden pain in her ankle as she ran with all of her might, but she had finally reached her limit. She fell face first on the ground as tears streamed down her eyes. The dwarf girl knew what fate awaited her, but there was nothing else she could do. "No, I don't want to die," the girl shouted. "Mama, save me, Mama." It was at that moment when her body was grabbed by something, making her scream with all of her might. Her screaming only lasted for only a brief moment before it disappeared completely. **T. We shouldn't have come. The leader of the party cursed internally. We should have only stayed on the outskirts. I have been too greedy. No matter how much he cursed himself, it was already too late. Another scream echoed in the garden, which made the leader subconsciously shudder. He had asked his teammates to spread out in order to increase their chances of survival. However, the screams he just heard sounded close to his location. It only meant one thing, and that was that the monster swarm was hot on his trail. Using everything he had, the dwarf ran as fast as he could like there was no tomorrow. Even though he could already feel a stinging pain in his chest, he ignored it and only ran as fast as he could. This allowed him to widen the gap between him and the mosquito swarm. A few hours later, he would come to discover that he was one of the only 3 survivors of his party of 6. The dwarf girl, who had sprained her ankle earlier, hung limply in Diablo's arm. He had discovered her crying when he was exploring the area where the mosquitoes were currently active. Naturally, Lux ordered Diablo to save her, as well as one of her companions that was nearby. After running for a few minutes, Diablo saw the skeleton warrior carrying an unconscious dwarf boy in his arms. The two immediately headed to one of the antholes that were scattered around the Figaro Gardens to hide from the mosquito swarm that was still hunting the members of the dwarf party. Although they wanted to save more dwarves, there were only 2 of them, and the things they could do were limited. After running in the underground tunnel for half an hour, the 2 undead finally arrived at a wide cavern where Lux was waiting for them. Unlike the unconscious dwarf boy, the ranger was awake and saw everything that had transpired. After arriving at the cavern, Diablo handed the ranger to Lux, while the skeleton warrior laid the unconscious boy to the ground. "Are you all right?" Lux asked. The ranger nodded. "Just a sprain, but I'm mostly all right. Thank you for saving me." "You're welcome," Lux replied as he gently laid her on the ground to tend to her injuries. The half-elf deftly removed the ranger's boots from her feet before taking out a healing potion from his storage ring. He poured half of the bottle's contents on the swelling ankle before checking the other dwarf's condition. The dwarf girl watched Lux tend to her companion and felt gratitude welling up in her heart. Deep inside, she felt relieved that she was able to survive this incident. If Diablo hadn't come to her rescue, she might have already turned into a dried husk right about now and would never see her mother ever again. After delivering the 2 dwarf children, Diablo and the skeleton warrior once again left the ant nest. They would look for the girl's other party members and bring them here to see if they could still be saved. Even if they were dead, Lux ordered them to bring their corpses back inside the ant nest so that he could return them to Leaf Village. Later, they could be taken back home to Solais to be given a proper burial. A few hours passed before Diablo and the skeleton warrior returned. The ranger girl turned pale after seeing the remains of her companions, who were bereft of blood. She covered her face with her hands and sobbed. Lux watched this scene with a sigh. The Figaro Gardens was currently an off-limit zone, and this dwarf party thought that they were strong and smart enough to survive it. Unfortunately, they thought too highly of themselves, which led to this tragic ending. Half an hour later, the unconscious boy awoke from his slumber. What followed next was a screaming fit after he saw what remained of his companions. It took a while for Lux to calm the panicking dwarf. Fortunately, in the end, he regained his composure. "Stay here for the time being," Lux said to the 2 surviving dwarves before placing the remains of their companions inside his black coffin. The coffin could store dead and dying humanoid creatures inside them, but Lux couldn't use its main ability because he hadn't met the necessary requirements. Also, he didn't want to do it as well. If he were to turn the dwarves into undead, he was sure that every dwarf in Leaf Village would hate him, even if his intentions were good. Since that was the case, the least he could do was bring their bodies back to the village and let their friends return them to Solais to get buried. A swarm is currently active near the exit of the garden, Lux said to the 2 dwarves after receiving Diablo's report. "We will return to the village once they decide to return to their nest." The 2 dwarves could only nod their heads as they sat and hugged their legs while staring at the small fire that Lux had made to cook some barbecue skewers made from horned rabbit meat. "Thank you for saving me," the dwarf boy said after a while. "My name is Glenn, 13 years old. I am a 3rd son of a viscount in the Dwarven Empire of Averith. I will do my best to repay your kindness in the future." The dwarf girl raised her head as she stared at Lux with an embarrassed expression on her face. She had completely forgotten to introduce herself to the half-elf after he had saved her. "My name is Megan, 14 years old." Megan bowed her head. "I'm only of commoner birth, but I thank you for saving me. I can't give you a reward because my family is poor, but if there's any way I can repay you, just ask. I will do my best to return the favor." Lux nodded as he also introduced himself to the two dwarves who were looking at him with grateful expressions on their faces. Lux said, "I don't need any repayment. I just did what needed to be done. I'm sure that if you were in my shoes, both of you would have done the same." Glenn and Megan lowered their heads. They felt ashamed because back then, they only thought about saving themselves and didn't care if their comrades were going to die or not. After all, they were just a temporary party that was made out of necessity. Lux didn't know what the two dwarves were thinking as he took 2 skewers from the fire pit and gave them to the two of them to eat. "Eat first," Lux stated. "Both of you will need your strength when we leave this place." The two dwarves thanked Lux for his generosity and ate the barbecue in silence. The half-elf was about to give them more when his sensitive ears picked up a buzzing sound coming from one of the tunnels leading to their cavern. Seeing the look of concern on Lux's face, the two dwarves frowned. They couldn't hear what the red-headed teenager was hearing, so they were not aware that the mosquitoes had discovered one of the hidden entrances that led into the colony. "Both of you stay here," Lux said as he ran towards one of the tunnels to help the ants resist the invaders. Right now, he and the ants were allies, so it was only natural for him to extend his help during their time of need. Glenn and Megan glanced at each other before nodding their heads at the same time. They stood up and ran after their savior. Although they didn't know what had caused Lux to have that anxious look on his face, they were sure that it was not something good. As soon as Lux arrived near one of the entrances leading to the colony, he could see several ants and mosquitoes already fighting against each other. Dozens of mosquitoes led by an iron-scaled torment mosquito, rank 2 monster, and 4 obsidian spite mosquitoes, rank 1 monster, started to clash against the defenders. Fortunately, the ants weren't pushovers. Although they were pacifists, when push came to shove, they were willing to fight back against any invaders. The guards of the ant nest, which are the horned army ant, rank 1, spat formic acid at the mosquitoes that attempted to enter their domain. The red-striped predator mosquitoes shrieked in pain after their bodies were drenched in acid. The obsidian spite mosquitoes, on the other hand, received minor injuries, but they were still capable of battling. Only the iron-scaled torment mosquito was unaffected by the acid sprays that fell on its body. It boldly impaled one of the defender ants with its spear-like blue suckers and started to suck its blood. The ants screeched in anger as they called for backup within their colony. Soon, more horned army ants emerged and started to bombard their foes with formic acid. Due to the overwhelming difference in numbers, the numbers of mosquitoes decreased drastically. Even the obsidian spite mosquitoes couldn't escape the army's advance. The only problem was the iron-scaled torment mosquito, whose body was resilient to the acid sprays that the ants were shooting at it. After seeing that all of its bodyguards had died, the iron-scaled torment mosquito planned to make its escape, but the ants were adamant to prevent it from getting away. They had blocked the entrance leading outside of their nest, effectively trapping the last invading monster within. The ants had climbed the walls and the ceiling of their nest and lunged at the invader who was trying its best to remain in the air. However, after several ants had taken hold of its body, it lost its ability to fly and fell to the ground. It was at that moment when the ants showed their superiority as they mobbed the scaled torment mosquito like a bunch of gangsters out for blood. Shrieks and screeches emerged from the cavern as the ants bit, pulled, and tore the mosquito apart. When the helpless mosquito had lost its ability to fly, 3 ants that were 2 meters tall emerged from the depths of the ant nest. Lux knew the name of this ant species because he had seen them while traversing the countless passages of the underground maze that had been built by the ants. Armored jaws, Lux muttered as he saw the rank 2 defenders of the ant colony. The bodies of these ants were as hard as steel. Using their powerful mandibles, they grabbed hold of the iron-scaled torment mosquito's body and tore it apart. Lux watched this scene unfold with a calm expression on his face. The reason why he was confident in having the ants become his business partners was due to the fact that they were the true overlords of the Figaro Garden. The mosquitoes were scary because they numbered in the tens of thousands, but it didn't mean that they could beat the ants, which numbered in the hundreds of thousands. When talking about superiority between the two races, the ants were clearly the winner. If not for their pacifist attitude, they would have long become the true rulers of the Figaro Garden. After the battle, the ants carried the bodies of the mosquitoes back to their queen so she could feast upon them. They also carried off the bodies of their fallen comrades, which they would bury at a specialized location called the Graveyard of the Ants. Earlier, Lux wanted to help, but when he saw that the ants didn't need it, he held his hand and simply watched the battle unfold. Glenn and Megan looked at the dead mosquitoes with lingering fear because they knew that if it weren't for Lux's help, they would have died a very painful and horrific death. Lux approached one of the guard ants and took out his Elysium compendium to communicate. After getting the information he needed, he bid the ant goodbye and signaled for Glenn and Megan to follow him. This tunnel will lead us to the surface. It is also the entrance that the mosquitoes use to infiltrate the ant nest, Lux explained. But you don't have to worry, the mosquitoes in this area have all been killed, so it is safe to use this passage to return to Leaf Village. The two dwarves nodded in understanding. Diablo, come forth, Lux ordered. Skeleton warrior, you come here as well. Immediately, a black knight and a skeleton warrior appeared in front of them. Check the entrance and the surrounding area for any mosquitoes, Lux commanded. Make sure to extend your search to ensure that the path towards Leaf Village doesn't have any danger. Diablo and the skeleton warrior nodded their heads as they ran towards the surface. Several horned army ants walked past Lux and the two dwarves to resume their duties in guarding their nest. The three followed behind the ants because it would be safer that way. After a quarter of an hour of scouting, Diablo informed the half-elf that the coast was clear and no threats were in sight. Hearing his trusted subordinate's report, Lux led the two dwarves back to Leaf Village without encountering any monsters along their path. Thank you for saving me again, Glenn bowed. I promise to repay this favor in the future. Me too, Megan said firmly. I will return this favor. Lux nodded. Please, take care of the bodies of your comrades and return them to their families. Glenn and Megan sadly nodded their heads, because this was the least that they could do for their party members that had fallen in battle. Glenn, Megan, thank goodness you are alive, a dwarf shouted as he ran in their direction. Glenn and Megan looked at their party leader, Oman, with sad expressions on their faces. When the latter had told all of them to separate, they knew that it was the only way to increase the number of survivors in their party. They simply couldn't fight against hundreds of mosquitoes at the same time. Doing so would only lead to a pointless death. As the dwarf neared their location, Lux unloaded the bodies of the three dwarves that he had placed inside sacks to be brought back home in Solais. Oman, this is Lux, Glenn said after the three had their reunion. He is the one who saved us and brought the bodies of our friends back to us. Oman's face paled after seeing the 3 sacks on the ground. After having escaped the mosquito's pursuit, the dwarf had kept on blaming himself for what happened to his party members. He really thought that he was the only one that survived and was ridden with guilt. Before seeing Glenn and Megan, Oman had already resolved to go back to the Figaro Garden to find the bodies of his party members and give them a proper burial. Thank you, Sir Lux, Oman bowed his head. If there comes a time that you will need my help, just say a word. Even at the cost of my life, I will help you to the best of my ability. Oman tapped his chest 3 times with his closed fist. This was a gesture that dwarves did when they made an absolute pledge to someone with their life on the line. Lux looked at the dwarf who had blonde hair and brown eyes who was looking at him with a serious expression on his face. Understood, Lux replied. If there will really come a time when I will need your help, I will not hesitate to call you. After spending time with the dwarves, the half-elf already understood how serious they were when it came to pledges. Because of this, he accepted Oman's promise because it was the right thing to do. Just return the bodies of your friends to their loved ones, and do not step into the Figaro Gardens again for the time being, Lux stated. The environment there is too dangerous for you kids. Also, do not throw your lives away because of greed. We only have one life. Treasure it and live it to the fullest. Lux bid the dwarves goodbye and returned to the inn. He had stayed in the Figaro Gardens for a week, and he hadn't had a good sleep for the past few days. Also, he needed to take a bath badly, so he decided to take the rest of the day off. As he walked toward his inn, he thought about his own party mates that had accepted an escort mission. He kind of missed the rowdy bunch of dwarves, especially Colette, who was always brimming with positivity. If I'm not mistaken, they will be back in another 2 weeks, Lux muttered as he made his way towards his room. When they return, I think I'll ask them to help me hunt the carbuncle in the aspiration planes. The carbuncle was the alpha beast of the aspiration planes. Although it was a rank 3 monster, it didn't specialize in attacks. Instead, it was a support-type monster that had the power to heal and buff the minions that fought for it. It was the weakest among the 3 alpha beasts in the beginner's village. Lux was confident that if they all worked together, they would be able to hunt it down without any problems. All of you, please be safe, Lux said softly as he looked to the east where Lindau village was located. I can't wait to go adventuring with you guys again. 26 beast cores. That was the total number of beast cores that were currently in Lux's possession. One of these cores belonged to the alpha beast, red-eyed Pteramantis. The half-elf looked at these cores, not with happiness, but with a serious expression on his face. He was torn whether he should use these cores to upgrade himself or to upgrade his summons. If Lux chose to use these beast cores for himself, he wouldn't be able to add any points to his existing stats anymore, because it would kick him out of the beginner zone. The half-elf knew this, but there was one more thing that was making him hesitate, and that was not knowing what skills could be learned from the beast cores. If he used the cores for his summons, he would no longer have the chance to learn the skills from them. Although the chances of learning a skill from a beast core was small, the possibility still existed. This was why he was hesitant to not use them to strengthen himself. Soul Book, Lux muttered as he raised his hand. Immediately his soul book appeared. The half-elf then checked his stats to see what he could do about his current predicament. Name, Lux von Kaiser. Age, 16. Race, half-elf. Rank, none. Health, 960/960. Mana, 940/940. Strength, 46 plus 3. Intelligence, 46 plus 1. Vitality, 31. Agility, 34 plus 3. Dexterity, 31 plus 3. Free stat points available, 35. Special abilities, Skill Evolution EX, Mana Drain EX. Active skills, Power Shot / Dark Arrow. Passive skills, Enhance Fortitude. Elysium Copper Coins, 170. Elysium Silver Coins, 24. Elysium Gold Coins, 8. Immortal Conqueror's Legacy. Rating, F+. Progress, 56 out of 100. Conquest is not all about claiming lands and expanding your domain. True conquest is conquering the hearts of people. Once you gain their loyalty, the path to dominion will open its doors for you. Upgrade rewards, +5 to all stats, +200 health points, Mana Drain EX. Note, upgrading your special constitution will allow you to unlock its abilities. Diablo, named Skeleton. Skeleton Fighter. Rating D. Mana, 10. Progress, 40/100. Skeleton Warrior. Rating, F+. Mana, 5. Summons one Skeleton Warrior to fight for you. Summon duration, 1 hour. Skill cooldown, 5 minutes. Progress, 0/100. Lux gazed at this status page as he held the rank 3 beast core of the red-eyed Pteramantis in his hand. I need 44 points to upgrade my body constitution to its next stage, Lux thought. With a rank 3 beast core, I can get 15 free status points and 15 body constitution points. The half-elf had long decided that he would be using the alpha beast core on himself, because the Pteramantis had 3 skills, and they were Fury / Gust, and Berserk. Right now, his slash skill was on its way to evolving into Fury /. Among the 3 skills that could be learned from the beast core, Fury / was not something he wanted to acquire. Gust was a wind elemental skill that created powerful gusts of wind that dealt damage and blew away one's enemies. Berserk, on the other hand, was a very useful ability that doubles one's stat points for a brief period of time. However, it had a downside. When the Berserk state faded away, the user would have their stats halved as they fell into a weakened state for a period of time. This was also why the red-eyed Terra Mantis fell to the mosquito swarm. After losing half its health points, the backlash of the weakened state made it unable to resist the mosquitoes and died under their suppression. Okay, I will upgrade my body constitution, then focus the remaining upgrades on Diablo and the Skeleton Warrior. Lux clenched his fist as he made up his mind to upgrade his body constitution. When he upgraded his body constitution for the first time, the overall upgrade to his body was fantastic. Also, the half-elf was hoping that the free options that would be available to him after his upgrade would include the War Cry skill. Last time, he was forced to choose mana drain in order to last longer during battles, which had been a great boon. Now that another upgrade was on the way, Lux wanted to choose the skill War Cry so that his subordinates would have increased bonus damage that would make their attack stronger. Okay, let's do this. Lux held the beast core with both of his hands and willed his thoughts to consume it. Ding. Do you wish to consume the rank 3 beast core? Yes/no. Lux naturally chose yes and picked the upgrade stat points option. Obtained 15 free stats points. Obtained 15 body constitution points. You have acquired the Fury Slash. The corner of Lux's lips twitched when he saw that the skill that he acquired was the skill that he didn't want to learn. The half-elf was about to curse out loud when a series of notifications appeared in his soul book. Skill Evolution EX detected that the skill Slash was on its way to evolving into Fury Slash. Forcefully upgrading Slash to Fury Slash. Upgrade successful. Skill Evolution EX has detected that the skill Fury Slash can be upgraded one more time. New skill unlocked. Double Fury Slash. Active skill requires 10 mana to use. Slash the enemy, twice forming an X, dealing heavy physical damage with a very high chance of dealing critical damage. Deals plus 100 damage with high chance of dealing critical damage. If your target has less than half of its health remaining, it deals an additional plus 100 damage to your attack with a high chance of dealing critical damage. Requirements to upgrade. Use Fury/10x. Progress 0/10. You can use Fury Slash and Double Fury Slash anytime once the requirement has been met. Lux blinked at the information in front of him before his initial annoyance turned into happiness. Not bad. Lux grinned after seeing the new skill that was added in his collection. The half-elf then used 3 more rank 1 beast cores and successfully upgraded his body constitution to the next level. Ding! Congratulations! Your body constitution has been upgraded. Choose one from among these 3 options as your bonus reward. Option 1, plus 50 permanent points to vitality. Options 2, War Cry, plus 30 physical and magical damage to you and your allies. Duration, 5 minutes. Cooldown, 10 minutes. Options 3, Item Transmutation. Transfer a skill from one item to another. Once the skill has been successfully transferred, the item will be immediately destroyed. As expected, the skill War Cry was available after Lux had upgraded his body constitution. However, a new skill had caught his interest, and it was none other than Item Transmutation. After using the Elysium Compendium, Lux found out that the skill Item Transmutation was a pseudo-mythical tier skill that could only be learned by Grandmaster Alchemists, Grandmaster Blacksmiths, Grandmaster Jewelers, and other Grandmaster artisans that specialized in creating items. In a nutshell, if Lux were to sacrifice Tranquility and transfer its ability to summon a Forest Wolf to Oathbreaker, the unique sword would gain a bonus skill. But it wouldn't end there. If Lux could acquire other items with special abilities, then he could transfer all of them to his equipment, making them more powerful. Damn, why must you make things difficult for me? Lux was both happy and frustrated at the third choice that appeared after he had upgraded his body constitution. His initial choice was to get War Cry, but now that the skill Item Transmutation has appeared, he was having a hard time deciding between the two. Right now, Lux was in a dilemma. Just like last time, He wasn't sure if the skill item transmutation would still be there after he upgraded his body constitution again. For him, a pseudo-mythical skill like item transmutation would allow him to have overpowered equipment if he played his cards right. Lux could see the skill's potential. He even thought of buying cheap equipment with special skills so he could attach them to his own equipment. Simply put, this was a money-burning skill with great payoff. Fine, Lux muttered after an intense internal struggle. So be it. I choose you. Item transmutation. Skill evolution. EX detected a new skill. Since the skill is learned from your body constitution upgrade and not from a beast core, evolution requirements will be waived. Item transmutation. EX. Transfer up to 2 skills or weapon attributes from one item to another. Once the skills or attributes have been successfully transferred, the sacrificed item will immediately be destroyed. Immortal Conqueror's Legacy. Rating E. Progress. 0/200. Conquest is not all about claiming lands and expanding your domain. True conquest is conquering the hearts of people. Once you gain their loyalty, the path to dominion will open its doors for you. Upgrade rewards. Plus 1,000 health points. Item transmutation EX. Bonus reward. Plus 1 summon skeleton skill. You will be able to summon 2 more skeletons to fight for you. Note: upgrading your special constitution will allow you to unlock its abilities. Yes, Lux raised his hand in excitement after seeing the bonuses that he got after upgrading his body constitution. This is so freaking awesome. He already expected that the item transmutation skill could evolve to its next form. But the thing that he didn't expect was that he would get a bonus reward for his summoning skill. Before, he could only summon 1 skeleton warrior, but now he could summon 3. Counting Diablo and his other skeleton warriors, he now had a total of 4 summons he could use to fight along his side. This greatly increased his manpower in one fell swoop. 24 beast core remaining. Lux eyed the beast cores in his possession. 20 of those beast cores were from rank 1 monsters, while 4 were from rank 2 monsters. Lux opened up Diablo's page in the soul book to check the points he needed to upgrade his trusted partner. Diablo. Named Skeleton. Skeleton Fighter. Rating D. Mana, 10. Progress, 40/100. Diablo had the title Firstborn. As Lux's first named creature, Diablo had gained the special ability to increase the number of skill points he would get when upgraded by a beast core. Normally, a rank 1 beast core would give 10 skill points. A rank 2 beast core would give 20 skill points. But if Lux were to use a rank 1 beast core on Diablo, the latter would gain 15 points. With a rank 2 core, the latter would gain 30 points. Without batting an eye, Lux used 2 rank 2 beast cores to upgrade his named creature, raising Diablo's overall performance. Diablo, finally a worthy opponent. Our battle will be legendary. Named Skeleton. Skeleton Fighter. Rating D+. Mana, 10. Progress, 0/300. Health, 1,275/1,275. Mana, 840/840. Attack, 70-95, plus 20 damage from Tranquility. Attack type, ethereal damage. Strength, 43, plus 1. Intelligence, 42. Vitality, 41, plus 2. Agility, 42, plus 2. Dexterity, 42, plus 2. Defense, 75, plus 100 defense. New. Title, Firstborn Squad Captain New. Active skills, /heavy/new. Bone Spear new. Passive skills, Parry, Tactician, Improved Dodge. Note, this skeleton is going to be the next Pirate King. Lux nodded his head in satisfaction. With the upgrade, Diablo's strength had officially broken through the Apostle grade, which was equivalent to a rank 1 monster. Not only that, Lux's named creature also acquired several bonuses like increased defense, a new title, 2 active skills, and 1 passive skill. Squad Captain increases the attack and defense of any unit under the named creature's command by 20%. Bone Spear. Mana, 10. Throws a spear made of bones at a target. Deals plus 100 damage to target. Has a medium chance to deal critical damage. Skill cooldown, 30 seconds. Improved dodge. Enhances the chance to dodge any attack during battle. The title, Squad Captain, came at the right time, Lux said as he rubbed his chin. Without Warcry, I have no way of increasing the damage of my undead summons. This skill will have to do for the time being. Now it's time to upgrade my skeleton warriors. Lux preferred quality over quantity, but since his body cultivation had given him additional manpower free of charge, he would use it to his full advantage. Lux consumed 10 rank 1 beast cores, bringing his stash of cores to 12. Choose which path of evolution you wish to take. Option 1. Summon 4 skeleton warriors to fight for you instead of 3. Option 2. Upgrade Summon Skeleton skill to Summon Skeleton Fighter. Skeleton Fighters? Isn't this Diablo's current class? Lux muttered as he looked at the 2 options available to him. I need to make them stronger, so Skeleton Fighter it is. Summon Skeleton Fighter. Rating, E+. Mana, 5. Max summons, 0/3. Summons 1 skeleton fighter to fight for you. Summon duration, 1 hour. Progress, 0/100. After upgrading the skeleton warrior to skeleton fighter, it had also gained the passive skill parry, which allowed it to deflect attacks then follow up with a counterattack. Lux used 10 more beast cores to upgrade his skeleton fighters one more time, bringing his stockpile of beast cores down to 2. Choose which path of evolution you wish to take. Option 1. Summon 4 skeleton fighters to fight for you instead of 3. Option 2. Allow skeleton fighters to use basic tactical formations in battle, allowing them to effectively fight as a team. Option 2 it is. Lux chose the second option without batting an eye. Teamwork was important in any battle. The half-elf understood this concept. With Diablo as the squad captain of the group, they would be able to launch effective attacks against their enemies and use their numbers as an advantage. Summon Skeleton Fighter. Rating D. Mana, 5. Max summons, 0/3. Progress, 0/200. Summons 1 skeleton fighter to fight for you. Summon duration, 1 hour. Health points, 250. Attack, 20 to 35. Active skills, slash. Passive skills, parry. Note, your skeleton fighters will gain great improvements on their next upgrade. Lux sighed after looking at his soul book. He already knew that being a necromancer would require him to use many resources. Unlike most of the other job classes which only required others to strengthen themselves, Lux needed to constantly upgrade his skills, which allowed his minions to become stronger separately. He knew that this path would be a difficult road to travel, but he had already made up his mind to go through with it until the end. Perhaps a month or 2 from now, I will have enough skeleton warriors to challenge the hell mode of the Bronze Crypt, even if I am alone. Lux pondered. When that happens, I will be able to constantly farm rank 2 beast cores without needing to share them with anyone. Lux chuckled as an ingenious idea appeared in his mind. I wonder how Colette will react if I manage to break her big sister's record in the Bronze Crypt. That will be a fun thing to see. The half-elf grinned while thinking of the not-so-distant future. Now that he and his summons had undergone an upgrade, he would be able to farm more beast cores in the Figaro Gardens, while waiting for his dwarf friends to return from their escort mission. He was sure that the next time they saw him, they would be surprised at how much he improved while they were away. A day after Lux finished upgrading his soul book, he went to visit the blacksmith in Leaf Village. His goal was to purchase cheap weapons that had skills imbued in them, so he could transfer the skills to make his own equipment stronger. Sir Randolph, good morning. Lux greeted the blacksmith who was taking a break from his smithing. Oh, it's you, Lux. Randolph greeted the half-elf who had become his regular supplier of beast parts that hailed from the Figaro Garden. Are you going to sell me some materials today? Lux shook his head. No, this time, I am here to buy weapons and armor. Randolph chuckled as he gestured to the weapons and armors that were on display in his shop. Lux held the Elysium Compendium in his hand, and the detailed information of the items in front of him materialized in his sight. The Elysium Compendium could also work as an appraising tool. After all, its main feature was access to detailed information about almost anything in Elysium. The half-elf looked at the war axe in front of him and immediately saw the information he was looking for. Axe of Onslaught. Weapon type, axe. Rarity, rare. Damage, 40 to 75. Durability, 300 of 300. Required strength, 30. Skill, critical strike. Each attack has a 10% chance to do critical damage. Price, 20 gold. Lux scratched his head as he looked at the price of the Axe of Onslaught and the coins he had in his possession. Elysium copper coins, 200. Elysium silver coins, 50. Elysium gold coins, 12. Even after selling all of those valuable monster parts to Randolph, his current funds still weren't enough to buy the axe in front of him. With a heavy heart, Lux could only force himself to look at the other weapons beside the axe and wondered if they would fit his budget. Sting. Weapon type, one-handed sword. Rarity, rare. Damage, 20 to 32. Durability, 200 of 200. Required strength, 15. Required dexterity, 15. Skill, envenom. Mana, 10. Has a low chance to poison your target. Price, 10 gold. Fang Chris. Weapon type, dagger. Rarity, rare. Damage, 15 to 25. Strength requirement, 10. Dexterity requirement, 20. Durability, 200 of 200. Skill, thorn. Has a 5% chance to apply the bleeding effect to your target with every strike. Bleeding effect reduces your target's health points by 1% of its maximum health points every 2 seconds. Bleed effect duration, 10 seconds. Price, 15 gold. Lux checked all the items in Randolph's shop. In conclusion, all of them were pretty expensive. Some of them had skills imbued to them, while others didn't have any. But the thing that made him depressed the most was how pretty darn expensive they all were. The normal weapons were obviously cheaper, but since they didn't possess any skills whatsoever, it was useless to buy them. Only superior weapons and sets of armor in Randolph's shop had skills, but aside from being expensive, there was only a limited number of them. It was at that moment when Lux understood how much of a money-burning skill the item transmutation, EX, was. Without any item in hand, he wouldn't be able to maximize the skill that he had gained after his upgrade. While Lux was having a dilemma, a sudden idea popped inside his head. Sir Randolph, do you have any defective products for sale? Lux asked. Even scrapped weapons will do. Randolph frowned as he looked at the half-elf who had just asked him something unreasonable. Boy, I don't sell defective products in my shop, Raymond replied with a snort. No dwarf blacksmith that cares about their name and reputation would do such a thing. If you ask me something like this again in the future, I'll hit you with my smithing hammer to knock some senses into you. Lux hurriedly apologized to the fuming dwarf and explained that it wasn't his intention to belittle him or anything. He made an excuse that he was very interested in blacksmithing and he wanted to see what defective products looked like, so when he forged his own weapons and sets of armor, he would have an idea on what was defective or not. You want to learn blacksmithing? Randolph sized up the half-elf half and down. Well, I guess anyone can learn it as long as they are passionate about the craft. Do you want to become my apprentice then? Beads of sweat formed in Lux's forehead because he couldn't believe that Randolph had taken his excuse seriously. He didn't plan to learn blacksmithing at the moment, because he was still planning to monopolize the loots in the Figaro Gardens and collect as many monster parts and beast cores as possible while the mosquitoes were still at large. However, before he could politely reject Randolph's offer, a notification materialized in front of him. Special quest, the art of blacksmithing. Randolph is currently looking for an apprentice to pass his craft on to. If you decide to accept this quest, you will gain the blacksmith subclass as a reward. This is an optional quest. You can choose to decline his offer if you don't want it. Rewards, blacksmith subclass. Title, apprentice blacksmith. Would you like to accept this subclass quest? Yes/no. Lux's body stiffened because he didn't expect that he would gain a special quest out of the blue. He was not new to the subclass option in games because most games had this feature. According to his understanding, his main class was Necromancer, allowing him to summon the undead, use curses, and other abilities connected to his profession. A subclass, however, would allow him to use the abilities of other job classes without any conflict with his main class. meaning Lux could become a necromancer and an apprentice blacksmith at the same time. Lux weighed the pros and cons of accepting Randolph's offer inside his head. If I became an apprentice blacksmith, I will be able to learn how to create weapons and armor, Lux thought. If in the process of blacksmithing, I happen to make an exceptional weapon with an attached skill, I can transfer it to my weapon without any problem. The only downside is that I will need to constantly craft weapons in order to raise the rank of my blacksmithing skills. The Elysium Compendium in Lux's hand had supplied him with information about the artisan classes in the world of Elysium. These craftsmen who pursued different fields couldn't raise their skill proficiencies by using beast cores. They needed to pursue their passion devotedly in order to gain a higher understanding of their craft. In Elysium, people could have up to a maximum of 3 subclasses. If they were to exceed that number, they would have to acquire special tokens from the Adventurers Guild to increase the number of subclasses up to 5. However, earning these tokens would require them to achieve an unbelievable feat that would be recognized by the ruler of the territory that they were staying in. There are no coincidences in the world, Lux thought. Maybe this is a blessing in disguise. All I need to do is take a leap of faith and see where this road will take me. After finalizing his decision, Lux faced the dwarf who was looking at him with a serious expression. If you're really fine with me, then I gladly accept your offer to become your apprentice, Lux replied. However, I can't always be with you, Sir Randolph, because I am an adventurer. That's fine, Randolph replied. I was also an adventurer like you in the past, but I took an arrow to the knee and decided to retire and become a blacksmith. We can focus on your training on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. I don't care what you do on the other days, but you have to be here on the days I mentioned. Lux nodded his head in agreement. Understood, Master. Master. Randolph played with his beard as he looked at the half-elf with a satisfied expression. I like the sound of that. The dwarf then extended his hand for a handshake, and Lux accepted it with a smile. When their 2 hands clasped each other, Lux immediately felt the hidden strength in Randolph's grip. The calluses on the dwarf's hand made the half-elf realize that he couldn't take this apprenticeship half-heartedly. Doing so would be the same as ridiculing Randolph's passion for his profession, and this was something that was against Lux's principles. After the 2 shook hands, Randolph happily closed his shop and took Lux to the tavern to celebrate his apprenticeship. Although he didn't know if he would become a successful apprentice blacksmith in the future, he was sure that he would definitely do his best, not only for Randolph's sake, but for his own sake as well. After accepting Randolph's proposal, Lux spent his days practicing blacksmithing, as well as going to the Figaro Gardens to help the ants retrieve the bodies of insects slain by the mosquitoes. The half-elf's blacksmithing apprenticeship wasn't going smoothly. Until now, he still hadn't managed to forge anything decent. All of his attempts ended up in failure, but Randolph said it was all normal. 7 days later, Lux returned to Leaf Village carrying some monster parts that he had obtained through the partnership he had with the ants. All in all, he earned 16 new beast cores, bringing his total number to 18. Just as soon as he arrived at the plaza, he noticed a crowd of dwarves, making him curious about what was happening. Since he was taller than them, he effortlessly saw through the crowd and noticed a wounded dwarf who was begging and clinging to Erin, the guard captain of Leaf Village, to help save her comrades. At first, Lux didn't recognize her, but after hearing her constant pleading, her voice finally registered in his head. "Helen," Lux shouted, "please let me through. That is my friend." The dwarves made a path for him, and the half-elf hurried over to the dwarf girl who had turned her head to look in his direction. "Big brother," Helen cried out, "please, help us. Colette and the others have been captured by the bandits." The little dwarf tried to stand in order to run to Lux's direction, but she was seriously injured, so she was only able to take a few steps before her legs lost their strength, causing her to fall down on the ground. However, just before Helen could completely fall, a pair of strong hands grabbed her and supported her body. "Big brother, woo-woo," Helen cried out with snot and tears streaming on her face. "Save Colette and the others. Please, I beg you." Lux hurriedly took out a healing potion and poured it over Helen's body. The little dwarf ignored her injuries because the only thing on her mind was to go and seek help from Leaf Village in order to save her companions. Calm down, Lux said as he poured another health potion on the wounds on her body. Tell me everything right from the start. Helen gradually regained her clarity of mind as her injuries started to recover. She immediately told Lux about what had happened to the members of the Golden Slayer party. According to Helen, after their group left Lindau village, the caravan traveled to the next village called Millwood Village. Everything was going smoothly, but they were suddenly ambushed by dozens of kobolds while they were camping to rest for the night. The bandit group was led by a kobold chieftain with draconic blood. The leader's strength was the reason why the bandits managed to overwhelm the defenders. The chieftain's strength was on par with an alpha beast's. The kobolds heavily injured the defenders and killed a few of them. Colette and her party mates were mostly injured, but their lives weren't in danger. Since Helen had been given a special teleport scroll by her family, she immediately used it to return to Leaf Village to ask for help. After hearing the details of the incident, Aaron frowned because this was not within the scope of his duties. First and foremost, he was the guard captain of Leaf Village. His duty was to ensure the village's safety, not travel several miles to aid the foreigners completing their rescue mission. Suddenly, several dwarves appeared and surrounded Lux and Helen. Was Master Robin also taken by those bandits? A middle-aged dwarf with blonde hair asked. Helen nodded her head. Robin was knocked unconscious by the kobolds, but he wasn't killed by them. I used the teleport scroll when I was about to be captured by the kobolds, so I don't know what happened after that. The middle-aged dwarf's expression became grim as he continued pressing Helen for more details. You were attacked between Lindau Village and Millwood Village, right? The middle-aged dwarf asked. Yes, Helen answered. Please, help save them. I beg of you. The middle-aged dwarf nodded his head. Don't worry. We will save Master Robin without fail. The dwarf then turned to one of his comrades and whispered something in his ear. The middle-aged dwarf's subordinate nodded his head and ran towards the north where the goat riders were stationed. After getting all the details from Helen, the dwarf and his subordinates left the scene, leaving Lux and the crying Helen behind. Big brother, please help us. Helen sobbed in Lux's chest as the half-elf held her tight. I will, Lux replied. I need some time to prepare. For the time being, come with me and rest at Grandma Annie's place. We will leave at sunset to rescue Colette and the others. Helen nodded. Even though the healing potion had allowed her body to heal, her mental and emotional injury from what she had just experienced made her exhausted. For this reason, she completely lost all of the strength in her body, and Lux had to carry her all the way to Grandma Annie's shop. 15 minutes later, Lux laid the sleeping girl on the bed and sighed. I'm sure that Aaron will not send any help for the little ones, Grandma Annie said as she sat on a chair. This is outside of his duties. I'm sorry, Lux, but don't expect any help from the village. Understand, Grandma Annie, Lux answered. Please, look after Helen for me. I will go and speak with Master Randolph for the time being. Okay, Grandma Annie nodded. Leave her to me. Thank you. This is just a small matter, but are you really going to go and save those kids? A draconian kobold chieftain is no easy opponent. Besides, he would definitely have strong lackeys that are all rank 1 and rank 2 monsters. Lux already knew about this, but he didn't care. Colette, Maddie, Andy, Axel, and Helen were his friends. He would be damned if he left them under the mercy of the kobold group. Seeing his determined gaze, Grandma Annie only shook her head because she already knew the answer to her question. Actually, she had already expected this to happen, but still felt sad because, in her eyes, Lux was merely going to throw his life away if he faced the You're going to save your friends from a kobold bandit group? Randolph rubbed his chin. That is not an easy task, my boy. Are you sure of this? Lux nodded. Yes, master. This is also why I would like to ask a favor from you. Favor? Very well. What do you want from me? Please, let me borrow the sword in your basement. Randolph's casual expression immediately turned serious upon hearing Lux's request. After accepting Lux as his apprentice, he had shown the latter his greatest creation, which was the mythical sword that he had kept hidden from everyone's eyes. In fact, this was the only mythical weapon in Leaf Village. No one knew about its existence except Lux, who had become Randolph's apprentice. You want to borrow Blood Moon? Randolph asked with his arms crossed over his chest. Yes, master. Lux bowed. Please, let me borrow your named weapon. A minute of silence descended inside the smithy as Randolph gazed at his apprentice, whose head had remained bowed. Even if I let you borrow it, your stats are not enough to wield it, Randolph replied. Blood Moon requires all of your stats to be at least 50, which is impossible for anyone who is still here in Leaf Village. It is simply out of the question for you to use it with your current strength. Lux raised his head. Master, I may not be able to wield it, but Diablo can. Please, let me borrow it to save my friends. I swear upon my name and honor that I will return it to you without fail. Randolph sighed as he leaned on the wall of his smithy. Without fail? I've heard that the leader of the kobolds is a rank 3 monster at its peak, Randolph stated. Even if Diablo can wield Blood Moon, he will still fall short against that monster. Aside from that, the kobold chieftain has plenty of subordinates to back him up. My weapon alone will not be enough to turn the tide of battle. Master, don't worry about that. I have a plan. Oh, let me hear it then. Lux told Randolph that he had a way to locate the location of the bandit group. He added that the riders of Noria were also riding for the bandit group. If he were to give them the information about where their headquarters were located, he would have many strong helpers to fight alongside him. This will certainly work, but there is just one problem. Lux, Randolph stated. You said that you have a way of finding their location, but will the riders of Noria believe you? To be honest, I don't know. Then how about this? Once you convince Boreas, the rider captain, to take you with them, I will lend Blood Moon to you. This is the only way that I will allow you to take Blood Moon from my treasury. Lux nodded his head in understanding. Understood. I will go and talk to Sir Boreas now. The half-elf didn't even wait for Randolph's reply and hurriedly left the smithy to look for the guard captain. When he arrived at the riders' temporary barracks, the riders were already mounted on their goat mounts and were about to depart. Lux saw the middle-aged man who had come to interrogate Helen earlier. He was already sitting on a goat mount beside Boreas. Clearly, if the middle-aged man managed to mobilize the riders of Noria to help save Robin from the bandits, he was no ordinary dwarf. Sir Boreas, please wait. Lux ran towards the rider captain. Several of the mounted riders blocked Lux's path and drew their weapons towards him. Boy, we are on an important mission, an annoyed-looking dwarf said. We don't have time to listen to your nonsense. That's right, another dwarf commented. We have more pressing issues to address, and we obviously have no time to play with a half-elf. Lux ignored the two dwarves as he shouted towards Boreas, who was also looking in his direction. I know the location of the bandit group. Lux shouted, Take me with you, and I'll lead you to them. You brat, stop spouting nonsense. That's right. If you keep on interfering with our mission, don't blame us for not being merciful. The two mounted dwarfs that had stopped Lux from approaching their captain raised their weapons in anger. They had always disliked everyone from other races and had long thought of Lux as an eyesore in Leaf Village. If not for the fact that their captain had ordered them to not harm the boy, they would have already taught him a lesson or two. Halt! A dignified shout stopped the two from hitting the half-elf, who didn't even make any effort to defend himself. The two dwarfs immediately ceased their hostilities and reluctantly lowered their weapons. It was at that moment when Boreas, one of the captains of Noria, urged his mount to walk towards Lux and eyed him from head to foot. Are you telling the truth? Boreas asked. This mission is of the utmost importance to us. Failure is not an option. If you are lying to us, I will make sure that you suffer a fate worse than death. Instead of answering them, Lux summoned his Elysium Compendium and opened its pages. Immediately, a projection appeared in front of everyone, showing them a map of Noria. In a place between the village of Lindau and village of Millwood Village, a golden dot blinked on the map. Before my friends left to do their escort mission, I put a special tracking spell on them that allows me to know their location, Lux answered. I'm not familiar with the topography of this land, but as you can see, I can pinpoint their location using my ability. If you don't take me with you, the chances of you finding Robin are very slim. However, that will be solved if I come along. So, what do you think, Sir Boreas? Can you take me with you? I also want to save my friends. All the dwarven riders looked at their captain and waited for his decision. Boreas was the strongest warrior in Leaf Village. He was a Grade B apostle, which was equivalent to a rank 3 monster. With him around, their chances of winning against a draconic kobold would be higher. Understood? You can come with us, Boreas answered. However, if you are lying to us, I will make you regret it. Lux breathed a sigh of relief after hearing Boreas' answer. With this, he would be able to borrow his master's mythical weapon to make Diablo more formidable. Sir Boreas, I have a favor to ask, Lux said with a serious expression on his face. Can you come with me to the smithy and tell my master, Randolph, that you will be taking me with you on your expedition? He said that he won't allow me to go unless I get your permission to let me go with you. You are Randolph's apprentice? Boreas widened his eyes in shock as he looked at the half-elf in disbelief. That old coot actually accepted you as his apprentice? Is the world going to end? Who are you calling old coot? You F***er. Randolph barged inside the barracks with a flushed face as he glared at the rider captain, Boreas. Bastard, since you are taking my apprentice with you, I expect you to bring him back safely. Randolph shouted at Boreas, making the other dwarf riders look at the blacksmith in disbelief. Boreas was a very stern dwarf, and not even their commander dared to shout at him like the blacksmith of Leaf Village was doing. I am not his nanny, Boreas replied in an indifferent tone. We're not going on an excursion. If he can't even protect himself, then he should just stay here and play house with you. Fine. Since you want my apprentice to play house with me, then so be it. Come, Lux. Let these eggheads handle this mission without you. Let's see if they find that Robin brat on their own. Randolph didn't even wait for Lux's reply and dragged the half-elf away from the barracks. And Master, I want to go and save my free. Hush. Let's talk when we're back in the smithy. Don't worry. Knowing Boreas, he will come knocking on my door sooner or later. Little did the half-elf know that Randolph was doing this for his sake. The blacksmith wanted the riders of Noria to officially ask his apprentice to be their guide, so that he would receive compensation from them. Also, he didn't have any plan to let the dwarves see the mythical weapon in his possession. He needed to pass it to Lux secretly in order to avoid any future problems. After the two arrived at the smithy, Randolph hurriedly locked the doors and made a gesture for Lux to follow him into the basement. I originally planned to bestow Blood Moon to a person that had the bearings of a hero, Randolph grumbled. Who would have thought that the first one who will wield it is not even a dwarf, but a skeleton? Fate sure knows how to play with my heart. Lux endured Randolph's ramblings until they arrived at his hidden treasure house, which was buried deep under the smithy. A few minutes later, the master and apprentice pair arrived at a small altar where a sheathed sword was held on a silver pedestal. It was Randolph's greatest creation, the mythical sword, Blood Moon. Blood Moon. Weapon type, one-handed sword. Rarity, mythical. Damage, 225 to 350. Requirement, all stats must be 50 or above. Additional requirement, only those recognized by Randolph could wield this weapon. Passive skills, Sharp Blade, Swift Blade, Life Steal, Thorn, Indestructible. Sharp Blade. The blade of this sword will always be sharp and will never dull. Swift Blade. The sword feels very light, which helps its wielder brandish it with ease. Able to strike very fast in quick successions. Life Steal. Each attack heals the user with 3% of their max health points. Bleed. Has a 5% chance to apply the bleeding effect to your target with every strike. Bleeding effect reduces your target's health points by 1% of its maximum health points every 2 seconds. Bleed effect duration, 10 seconds. Indestructible. This weapon is indestructible. It cannot be destroyed. The reason why Randolph decided to show Lux the mythical weapon in the first place was to encourage his apprentice to do better. He believed that once Lux realized how amazing being a blacksmith was, the more serious the latter would be in his studies. Although this was already Lux's second time seeing Blood Moon, his admiration for the weapon never waned. On the contrary, the more he looked at it, the more determined he became to increase the proficiency of his smithing skill, so that he would be able to create his own mythical weapon. Randolph took the weapon from the pedestal with both hands before presenting it to Lux. Take it, Randolph said. Remember, I'm only loaning it to you for a short while. Go and save your friends, and make sure that you return in one piece. Lux accepted the sword with both hands and looked at his master with a grateful expression. Thank you, master, Lux replied. I will not let you down. As he held the mythical weapon in his hand, Lux believed that once Diablo equipped this weapon, his named creature would be able to easily handle rank 1 and 2 monster with ease. Wait for me, Colette, Lux thought as he gripped the sword firmly in his hands. I'm coming to save you guys. The adorable little dwarf was Lux's first friend in Leaf Village. Even without the help of the Riders of Noria, he would still do his best to go and save her, as well as the other members of the Golden Slayer party. Right now, Diablo was still unable to wield Blood Moon, as he still needed to be upgraded one more time before he could do so. Fortunately, Lux had acquired more than enough beast cores to upgrade his named creature. As the half-elf was about to return to the room in his inn to make preparations, Boreas appeared in Randolph's smithy to formally invite the half-elf to join them on their rescue mission. An hour later, Lux, Helen, and the Riders of Noria left Leaf Village together in haste. Their destination was the bandit hideout, which was located somewhere in a mountainous region between Lindau Village and Lux and Helen were seated in a carriage pulled by 2 horses. They were procured by the middle-aged man who had asked Helen about Robin's whereabouts. They all traveled nonstop, and, according to Lux's estimate, with this speed, they would arrive at their destination within 2 days. Although he was very worried about Colette and the others, there's nothing he could do but pray to the gods that they were safe. For the time being, Lux shifted all his attention to his soul book. He had 18 beast cores in hand, and half of them were rank 2 beast cores. The ants had been very generous in giving him these beast cores because his scouting massively helped them to forage safely in the areas where the mosquitoes had just finished feeding. Now that he was dealing with an emergency situation, he immediately used the rank 2 beast cores to upgrade Diablo's progression to the next stage. After using 9 rank 2 beast cores, Lux managed to upgrade Diablo's progression bar, but it still fell short of his target. Progress: 270 of 300. Left with no other alternative, Lux used 2 rank 1 beast cores, which gave him exactly 30 additional skill points, bringing his stockpile of beast cores to 7. Ding! Your named creature, Diablo, has reached a milestone. Please choose 2 options from the bonus upgrades available for him. Option 1. Increase health points by 3,000. Option 2. Learn active skill, Whirlwind Slash. Option 3. Learn active skill, Dual EX. Option 4. Learn passive skill, Guts. Option 5. Upgrade Skeleton Warrior to Skeleton Knight. Option 6. Upgrade Skeleton Warrior to Skeleton Rider. Lux ignored option 1 because a mere 3,000 health points, since it wouldn't change anything at this point. After checking the Elysium Compendium, he found the information he was looking for about the skills that appeared in the list of Diablo's bonus upgrade options. Whirlwind Slash is an AoE skill that hits multiple targets. This is good if Diablo is surrounded by enemies, Lux thought as he rubbed his chin. Dual EX is similar to Taunt's skill, but this skill would force your opponent to exchange 1 blow with you no matter what. It has a 1-minute cooldown, which is a good option since I don't have any taunting skill at the moment. Guts will allow Diablo to survive 1-hit attacks that could instantly kill him. This skill is useful, but only at the higher levels. The half-elf then eyed the 2 job upgrades that became available for Diablo. His named creature had only become a skeleton fighter recently, but due to the milestone, Diablo could once again upgrade his profession to a higher class free of charge. Skeleton Knight is a balanced job class similar to Skeleton Fighter, but stronger, Lux mused. As for Skeleton Rider, it is a mounted unit that specializes in mobility and has many other advantages. The only problem is that it's not very useful when raiding dungeons because of the cramped space. However, it is good for open-world exploration because it allows Diablo to tame monsters as his mount. Lux scratched his head when he realized that his named creature was more of a protagonist than him. Diablo kept on getting more powerful with each upgrade he got, even faster than the master. After a long internal struggle, The half-elf chose the third and fifth option. You have chosen the skill, Dual EX, and upgrade Skeleton Warrior to Skeleton Rider. Is this your final answer? Yes/no. Lux chose yes, and immediately several more notifications appeared on Diablo's soul page. Job change bonus. All stats plus 20. Skill union of skeleton and beast has been acquired. Skill tame mount has been acquired. Title relentless charger has been acquired. Union of skeleton and beast allowed Diablo to effectively fight while riding on a mount. This passive skill allowed him to remain seated even if he received attacks that should have been able to dismount him. Tame mount, as the name suggested, allowed Diablo to tame a mount that he could ride in battle. The chances of taming a mount would depend on how strong it was. If the creature was weaker than Diablo, the latter would be able to tame it without a problem. However, if the creature was stronger, the chances of taming it would be lower, which made it extremely difficult. Also, Diablo couldn't tame creatures that were 2 ranks higher than it. These limitations were to prevent the named creature from obtaining strong mounts that exceeded its current strength. Relentless Charger, on the other hand, gave Diablo an additional 30% damage and increased chances of dealing critical strikes while mounted. Diablo, named Skeleton. Skeleton Rider. Rating C. Mana 10. Progress 0/500. Health 2500/2500. Mana 1240/1240. Attack 125 to 170, plus 20 damage from Tranquility. Attack type Ethereal damage. Strength 63, plus 1. Intelligence 62. Vitality 61, plus 2. Agility 62, plus 2. Dexterity 62, plus 2. Defense 75, plus 100 defense. Title: Firstborn, Squad Captain, Relentless Charger. Active skills: Slash, Heavy Slash, Bone Spear, Dual EX. Passive skills: Parry, Tactician, Improved Dodge, Union of Man and Beast. Note: SH*T just got real. Diablo has 317 combined stat points. He is now in the middle stages of Grade D Apostles. Lux thought as he started to feel slightly envious of his partner in crime, but he couldn't do anything about it. Diablo didn't have to follow the laws of the beginner village because he was a summoned creature, but Lux couldn't. After sighing internally, he equipped Blood Moon in Diablo's equipment page. The Blood Red Sword, which was Randolph's greatest creation, shone with an eerie glow. With the mythical sword in hand, Diablo was a menace and had more than enough leeway to fight against rank 2 monsters without problem. It was also possible to fight rank 3 monsters because of the mythical weapon's attributes. As long as Diablo could hit the target, his health points would be replenished without problem. Now that his preparations were complete, Lux checked Colette's condition in the Elysium Compendium. According to the information he could access, Colette had received minor injuries, but there was no danger to her life. Maddie, Robin, Andy, and Axel had more serious injuries, but their current status told Lux that they were far from kicking the bucket. With the safety of the children confirmed, Lux was able to gain some peace of mind as he coordinated with Boreas to lead the group in the general direction of where his friends were. If all goes well, we will arrive at our destination faster than we expected, Boreas said as he looked at the place Lux had pointed out on his map. Now I understand why the patrollers can never seem to find the bandits. They're hiding inside the mountain. This will be a bit tricky. At the moment, their current forces were composed of 30 goat riders, 12 warriors, including the middle-aged dwarf, Lux, and Helen. Their combined forces were only 45 in head count, and they didn't know how many enemies they would be facing. Even so, they had no choice but to deal with the current situation as quickly as possible. Boreas had also sent a messenger bird to the stronghold of Noria, asking for backup. The dwarf captain had shared the information that Lux had given to him to his superior, and he hoped that reinforcements would arrive by the time they reached their destination. Lux could only see the location of his friends. He didn't know how many enemies there were, but he was confident that if they all worked together, they would be able to save everyone without any casualties on their side. So, this is why we can't find them, Boreas said with a serious expression on his face. These kobolds chose this place to build their nest. They were all looking at the entrance of a cave that was guarded by 3 kobold warriors. They were just rank 1 monsters and didn't pose a threat to their team. However, the problem now was that they didn't know how many kobolds they were going to deal with. Kobolds' nests usually consisted of thousands of individuals. Among the humanoid creatures, these demonic-looking dogs reproduce at a very alarming rate. Legend has it that they also had draconian blood flowing through their bloodlines, which sometimes led to a birth of a draconic kobold whom they treated with reverence. The middle-aged dwarf, who went by the name Nevriel, was the assigned leader of this expedition, which caught Lux by surprise. Lux already had a feeling that the Nevriel was someone important, but he never expected that the rider-captain of Noria would give the middle-aged man full authority over this rescue mission. Nevriel played with his beard as he weighed their options. Right now, the reinforcements of Noria were on their way. According to his estimates, they would arrive after a day. He was only concerned about Robin's safety. Although waiting was the best option right now, he didn't know Robin's current condition. He was afraid that if they waited another day, the kobolds might do something to the boy. If Robin died on this mission, the consequences were something that Nevriel and the stronghold of Noria couldn't afford to shoulder. No matter what, they had to save Robin at all costs. Using our mountainside is not possible, Nevriel said after careful consideration. We have no choice but to engage them on foot. The only problem is that the kobold's nest is very big. It will take us some time to find Robin's location. The dwarves nodded their heads in unison. Lux, on the other hand, frowned. He understood that their priority was to rescue Robin, but they seemed to forget that he was not the only one that needed saving. For him, his priority was to rescue Colette, Maddie, Andy, and Axel. He would prioritize the lives of those little dwarves over Robin any day. Lux opened his Elysium compendium and used it to scan the location of the children in the kobold's nest. Colette, Maddie, and Axel seemed to be in the same place, while Robin and Andy were in another location. Colette's group was in the northeastern part of the nest, while Robin's was on the northwestern side. Lux knew that if he told the rescue party that he knew where Robin was located, they would not hesitate to prioritize him over the other dwarf children. While he was thinking about what to do next, he noticed that Robin's status had changed. Right now, the information about Robin stated that he was seriously injured. A few seconds later, Andy's condition had also changed to seriously injured. It meant that they were currently being harmed by the kobold, which left Lux no choice but to come up with a crucial decision on the spot. While the dwarves were arguing on what to do next, Lux cleared his throat and made his presence known. I know where Robin is inside the nest, Lux said. Immediately, everyone stopped talking and looked in his direction. Right now, he is seriously injured. Lux continued his explanation. If we don't hurry, we might not be able to arrive in time. Then what are we waiting for? Nevriel replied with urgency. Boy, if Robin is rescued, you will be able to gain great merits. So, let's hurry up and save him. However, Lux shook his head as he stared back at Nevriel with a serious expression on his face. I will help you on this mission on one condition. All of you will swear to the Earth Goddess that you will also save Colette and the others. Nevriel narrowed his eyes. He was a veteran, and, looking at Lux's expression, something was telling him that this wasn't as simple as it seemed. Are they not in the same location? Nevriel asked. This was the only conclusion that he could come to as to why Lux was asking them to make an oath to their goddess. Lux nodded. Colette and my friends are located at the deepest part of the nest. Robin and Andy are in the middle area. However, I will not tell you their location if you don't make an oath to the Earth Goddess to save my friends. Boy, do you think we're your hired goons or something? One of the dwarves asked in an intimidating tone. Do you really think we don't have ways to make you talk? Another dwarf glared at Lux. If you refuse to cooperate, I don't mind skinning you alive. Lux remained unfazed as he stared at Nevriel. Although he didn't know what Robin's real identity was, he could tell that the person in front of him and the riders of Noria seemed to place Robin's safety above all else. This meant that he was a very important person to them. Using this as leverage, the half-elf faced them head-on with a devilish smile. Since you're threatening me, Don't think that I can't threaten you back, Lux thought. You're not the only one who knows how to play dirty. The half-elf suffered in both of his lifetimes, so he was already used to pain. Right now, he was the one who had the upper hand, which he could use to his advantage no matter what. If the riders of Noria refused to help Colette and the others, then he wouldn't help them either. Sure, you want to skin me alive? Go ahead, Lux replied. However, I already told you that Robin is seriously injured. Who knows? By the time you finish skinning me properly, he might be taking his journey to the afterlife. Lux sneered at the dwarf whose face had turned beet red from anger. In a battle of wits, the first one to back down was the loser. The half-elf had no intention of losing. He had promised Helen that he would save Colette and the others, and he would be damned if he allowed himself to be intimidated by dwarves who thought they could bully him into submission. Oh no, Robin's condition is now fatally injured. I don't think he will survive more than 5 minutes, Lux said with a serious expression. Just as he expected, all the dwarves surrounding him all had grim expressions on their faces. In truth, Lux was lying. Robin's and Andy's status told him that they were still seriously injured. He was merely testing them to see how important Robin was to the dwarves. Back on Earth, this whole scenario could be described in one word: blackmail. Yes, Lux was using blackmail to force the dwarves to make an oath, so that they wouldn't abandon his friends after they saved their precious Robin from the kobolds. Boy, you're lying, Nevriel said through gritted teeth. Lux shrugged as he gazed at the dwarf who was looking at him with a deadly stare. You'll know whether I'm lying or not in 5 minutes. By then, it will be too late for all of you. I don't know who Robin is, but judging from your expressions, he must be a very important person. Are you all prepared to suffer the consequences if he died in this place? Let me tell you, his life and death does not mean anything to me. Now choose. Swear that you will save my friends to the best of your abilities. You will also swear that you will not harm us in any way and lead us safely back to Leaf Village. If you fail to abide by this oath, not only will all of your souls be damned by the Earth Goddess, the entire stronghold of Noria, as well as those in your 7 generations, will also be damned for eternity. Bastard, one of the dwarves growled. He was about to smash Lux's head with his hammer when the other dwarves stopped him from taking a single step from his place. This is why I hate other races. Another dwarf spat on ground. Bastards, the lot of them. Lux remained indifferent to the words and the glares of the dwarves. However, Helen couldn't do the same. She was still young and inexperienced, so the glares of the adults made her little body shudder. Lux noticed this and moved to stand in front of her, so that she wouldn't have to see the hateful stares that were being thrown in their direction. Aren't all of you ashamed? Lux said with disdain. Bullying a child of your own race just because she wants to save her friends? If you don't want to go, then we will go on our own. You can stay here until tomorrow if you want, but I will assure you that it will be too late by then. Let's go, Helen. Lux held the little girl's hand and turned to take her away from the dwarf's camp. He was serious when he said that he would go alone if he had to. Fortunately, a hand grabbed his arm and held him in place. The half-elf breathed a sigh internally because he knew that he had won the gamble he made. Fine, I will make an oath, Nevriel said through gritted teeth. It was quite obvious that he didn't like being forced to do something against his will, but the current circumstance left him with no other alternative. Robin was very precious to the stronghold of Noria, and one wrong move could send them all to the execution grounds if they failed to bring him back safely. The half-elf turned around and stared back at Nevriel, whose eyes screamed murder. Make the oath, and let's start saving people. Lux replied, unfazed by the fact that Nevriel's gaze was filled with killing intent. Time waits for no man, nor dwarf. All the dwarves that were part of the expedition swore an oath to the Earth Goddess, who they worshipped. This was the greatest oath a dwarf could make. Even the dwarfs in Solais shared the same mentality. Once they made an oath, they had to do it no matter what. Failure to do so would weigh terribly in their conscience because it would mean that once they died, their souls would be cast away, forever banished from the Earth Mother's embrace. Keep your word, half-elf, or I swear by the Earth Goddess that you will not keep your life, Nevriel said in a threatening tone. We'll see whose oath will be broken first, Lux replied with a calm expression on his face. Now listen to me. Our first goal is to eliminate the guards as fast as we can and prevent alarming the kobolds inside the nest. Of course, this will only work at the early stages of our rescue mission. The moment we encounter a single kobold in the nest, we will be in for a tough battle. Our plan is simple: strike fast and run fast. The sooner we rescue the hostages, the sooner we leave. I will not interfere with the commands of the dwarves. I also know that it is unrealistic to think that we will be able to rescue our targets all at once with the current manpower we have. Since your priority is to save Robin, then you can go ahead and save him. However, once he is safe and sound, you will then coordinate with the reinforcements coming from the stronghold of Noria to raid the nest and rescue my friends. Do we all have an understanding? Nevriel and Boris nodded. Deep inside, they felt relieved that Lux was still thinking logically. It was simply impossible for their current manpower to fight an entire kobold nest on their own. If you are all ready, we can begin the operation, Lux stated. Ellen, stay close to me. No matter what happens, stay by my side. The little dwarf nodded her head in understanding. Even if Lux didn't remind her, she would still stick to him because the adult dwarves scared her. The kobold warriors stood in their position in a carefree manner. For them, doing this was a boring job. Although there were wandering beasts in the mountains that were stronger than them, none of the kobolds were afraid of being attacked. They always had the mentality that nothing couldn't be overcome by sheer numbers. As one of the humanoid races that specialized in reproduction, the kobolds were one of the most annoying monsters to fight due to their quantity versus quality mindset. While the three guards were casually chatting with each other, several throwing axes flew in their direction. All three guards died almost at the same time as the axes embedded themselves on the kobolds' heads, back, necks, and chests. As soon as the kobolds collapsed on the ground, several dwarves sprang up from their hiding places and dragged the slain kobolds away to hide them. Just for good measure, Boreas stabbed the chests of all three kobolds to make sure that all of them were really dead. Once the deed was done, the dwarf rescue party entered the nest to find Robin as soon as possible. On the other hand, Lux summoned Diablo and his 4 skeletal fighters to guard the rear of the group to inform them if there were any kobolds returning to the nest. Nevriel and Boreas nodded their heads in appreciation because they couldn't spare any of their men to do this job. Fortunately, Lux had enough manpower to do this important job, making the dwarves' anger from being blackmailed earlier to simmer down a bit. Unknown to them, Lux had other reasons for letting Diablo and his skeletal fighters stay at the rear, aside from keeping a lookout for possible backstabbers that the half-elf had kept to himself. 3 minutes later, the rescue party encountered a group of kobolds patrolling the nest. Immediately, a scuffle broke out. Fortunately, the vanguard of the dwarves, led by Nevriel and Boreas, were all Grade D and C apostles, which were equivalent in stats to rank 1 and 2 monsters respectively. Normal kobold warriors were not a match to them. The true problem happened when they neared the first spacious cavern in the underground pathways. After checking the surroundings, Nevriel and Boreas knew that it would be impossible to proceed without the kobolds raising the alarms. Over 100 kobolds stayed in the cavern. Some of them were cooking, some were loafing around, while others were sharpening their weapons. It was a communal area where some of the kobold warriors stayed, while waiting for their chief to give them orders. Near the back of the cavern were 3 black kobolds that were larger than the others. These were the kobold leaders, who were tasked to lead their own troops to hunt or participate in banditry, depending on the orders of the kobold chieftain. Every kobold nest had these communal caverns near the entrance of the nest that served as the main line of defense in case they got invaded. Its main role was to alert the entire nest if there was a need for everyone to move into action, so they could repel the invaders together. Lux frowned because, just like Nevriel and Boreas, he knew that an all-out battle was inevitable. Boreas raised his hand and made a gesture, signaling all the other dwarves to get ready. Half a minute later, the group charged inside and started to massacre the kobolds that were in their way. The 2 kobold leaders immediately sprang up in action in order to face them in battle. The other kobolds then started to make noise, with some of them running deeper inside the nest to raise a ruckus and alarming their brethren that their home was being invaded. The dwarves worked quickly and efficiently, killing all of their enemies in less than 5 minutes. Nevriel and Boreas didn't hold back, using their rank 3 prowess to overwhelm the kobolds who were caught by surprise. Where next? Nevriel asked Lux, who had just killed 2 kobolds that had tried to attack Helen beside him. We go straight and turn left at the 3rd intersection on the way. From there, we just continue heading west until we arrive at the place where Robin and Andy are being held captive. Nevriel nodded and led the charge alongside Boreas. Lux, Helen, and the other dwarves followed, leaving the scene of carnage behind them. A minute later, Diablo, as well as 3 skeletal fighters, arrived at the cavern. Lux had tasked them with an important mission, a mission that they would follow without fail. Screams and shrieks resounded inside the nest as the kobolds and the dwarf party clashed. Although the kobolds were not a match for the dwarves, the riders of Noria still suffered several injuries to their bodies. Some of them were unlucky and received serious injuries during the intense battle being fought at close range. Fortunately, Helen was a cleric. The little dwarf healed everyone to the best of her ability, while munching on the honey-flavored candies that were being provided to her by Lux. The half-elf made sure to visit his grandma Annie back in Leaf Village to buy all the candies she had in stock for this mission. Naturally, the old lady was more than happy to sell all the candies she had to her regular customer, which helped both of them greatly. Because of this, the dwarves' attitude towards Helen changed. Boreas even assigned 2 of his subordinates to guard the little girl and ensure that no kobold would put her life in danger. Lux was quite happy with this arrangement because it gave an added layer to Helen's security. The pathway that led to the place where Robin and Andy were being held was drenched with blood. This was the first time that Lux had witnessed such a bloody battle. His heightened senses, especially his sense of smell, made him feel very uncomfortable because of the heavy smell of blood in the surroundings. He was also in awe of how the kobolds fearlessly engaged them without care for their lives. They were like kamikaze fighters whose only intention was to deal as much damage to their enemies as they could before they died. When one kobold died, another took its place. They came with 45 members, and in that short amount of time, 5 dwarves had already died in battle, which showed that even if the warriors of Noria were stronger, they were still not a match against the overwhelming disparity in numbers. Their only saving grace was that the kobold nest was large. Even if the kobolds swarmed in droves, it would still take the rest of their brethren some time before they could reach their location. Robin and Andy are over there, Lux shouted as he pointed at several cages in the distance that were made from wood. Nevriel broke out of the scuffle, followed by 4 of his men, and ran towards the cages. Boreas and his men held their ground and continued to fight against the kobolds whose numbers kept on increasing. Lux gritted his teeth as he stood in front of Helen and fought off any kobolds that had managed to break through the vanguard's defenses. His arm was already aching from constantly swinging his sword without rest. It was at that moment when he knew that everyone in the rescue team was nearing their limits. Even Helen, who was constantly healing the dwarves, were starting to breathe heavily. Sweat streamed down her face as she chanted without stopping to prevent anyone from dying. "Retreat!" Nevriel shouted as he carried an unconscious Robin on his shoulder like a sack of rice. Andy was also safe and being carried by another one of Nevriel's subordinates. The group hurriedly made their way back to the entrance with Boreas and the stronger warriors of Noria guarding the rear. Unfortunately, they encountered a group of kobolds in the intersection leading to the entrance, and another bloody battle took place. This time, the big shots of the kobold race were present, which made the battle more difficult. For rank, 3 kobold mages cast fireball spells, which severely injured 4 of the dwarves. Seeing that they were in a difficult situation, Nevriel no longer hesitated and ordered everyone to break through the encirclement. Suddenly, one of the kobold mages unleashed the skill Earth Tremor, which made the ground under everyone's feet tremble. Lux sensed that the ground under his and Helen's feet was about to give way, so he decisively lifted the little girl and threw her towards Boreas with all of his might. "Sir Boreas, catch her!" Lux shouted as the ground under his feet collapsed. Boreas heard Lux's shout and hurriedly caught the little girl who was screaming her lungs out. That was the last thing the half-elf saw before he fell into the deepest part of the kobold's nest. The dwarves knew that Lux was a goner, and there was nothing they could do to save him. Right now, even their own lives were in danger. The dwarves hurriedly retreated with everything they had, while an angry mob of kobolds ran after them with only one thought in mind, and that was to hunt them down before they managed to escape their nest completely. Lux felt his entire body aching and almost couldn't move a muscle due to the injuries he received from the fall. Fortunately, he had no broken bones, only a badly bruised body that made him want to scream in pain. "Diablo, come." Lux ordered, and his trusted partner appeared beside him. The half-elf willed the storage ring in his hand to take out a few potions, which Diablo took to spray over his injured body. The rest he helped Lux drink, which allowed the half-elf to recover from his injured state. Although he fell deeper inside the kobold's nest, there were no kobolds in the vicinity. All of them were busy chasing after the dwarves, who were running towards the exit with their lives on the line. Lux summoned his soul book to check where he was currently at. He could see Helen's marker going further and further away from him, which made him breathe a sigh of relief. "Let's go save Colette and the others first," Lux said as he checked the pathways he needed to take in order to reach his friends. Diablo nodded his head and soon followed the red-headed teenager as they ran within the underground maze that the kobolds had built. Their journey wasn't that smooth since Lux and Diablo had to prioritize their safety. Right now, the half-elf was behind enemy lines, and one small slip could end his life in a matter of minutes. After almost an hour of traversing the nearly abandoned lower levels of the kobold's nest, they finally arrived at their destination. Just like Robin and Andy, Lux found his friends trapped in cages. However, they were not alone. Several other dwarves were also imprisoned there, which caught the half-elf by surprise. "Well, since I'm already here, might as well free them all," Lux thought as he ordered Diablo to hack apart the wooden planks that kept the other dwarves imprisoned. The half-elf prioritized freeing his friends, because they were the main reason why he had braved the dangers of the kobold's nest in the first place. "Be big, brother?" Colette asked in surprise and confusion. "What are you doing here?" "I came to rescue you guys," Lux replied. "Sure, don't raise your voice. We might get discovered if you do." Colette nodded her head in understanding and kept her mouth shut. After she was freed, she went to the wooden crates in the corner of the room to retrieve her equipment and storage rings. Maddie and Axel did the same, as well as the other dwarves whom Lux and Diablo had freed. After distributing health potions to everyone, most of their injuries had been treated, making them capable of fighting against the kobolds that had taken them captive. A dwarf with blonde hair and blue eyes walked towards Lux while carrying an axe. He thanked Lux for rescuing them and introduced himself as Hans. He was one of the prominent merchants in the kingdom of Guelvin, and his base of operations were the villages and towns near the stronghold of Noria. The blonde-haired dwarf was also the leader of the merchant group that had hired Colette's and several other adventure parties as escorts for his trade expedition. Unfortunately, they got captured by the kobolds, and all of their wares were seized. Lux shook hands with the dwarf before addressing everyone at the cavern. "Before anything else, let me explain the current situation first," Lux said. "Right now, a group of riders from Noria have come here for a rescue operation. I was their guide and led them to this location. Unfortunately, we were forced to retreat after saving only a few individuals because of the sheer numbers of the kobolds. After a great battle, I fell down to this lair due to the spells of the kobold mages. As for the main force, they are headed towards the exit of this nest as we speak. However, none of you have to worry. Once the reinforcements from the stronghold of Noria arrives, they will conduct another rescue operation and deal with the kobolds inside this nest." Lux made sure to emphasize that he was the one that led the riders of Noria to the nest in order to show his importance to the dwarves in front of him. After hearing his report, the majority of the dwarves sighed in relief because there was still a chance for them to leave the place alive. "You said that you can navigate through this terrain," Hans said with a determined look on his face. "Can you also lead us to the exit?" Lux nodded. However, his next words dampened the mood of everyone inside the cavern. "Although I can lead you all to the exit, I cannot do that at this point in time, Lux answered. The only reason why I managed to reach this place unharmed is because the majority of the kobolds have climbed to the upper level to pursue the trespassers to their domain. If we go up right now, we would just be hacked to pieces. Our best course of action is to wait for reinforcements to arrive. Colette, who had been listening to the side, voiced her concern about their current situation. Big brother, what do we do now? Colette asked. Are we just going to stay here? Lux shook his head. This place is too big, and it's hard to defend ourselves here. We need to find a good hiding place while we wait for the rescuers to arrive. Lux summoned the Elysium Compendium to look for possible hiding spots small enough for them to effectively defend against a horde of kobolds that were out for blood. Follow me, Lux said. I found a place where we can hide. And why should we follow you? A grumpy dwarf asked back. I ain't following a damn half-elf. Lux didn't even bother to glance at the grumpy dwarf as he herded Colette and the others to follow him. He had already done what he could for the captives. Whether they wanted to follow him or not was none of his business. Seeing his indifferent attitude, the grumpy dwarf cursed under his breath. Hans, on the other hand, narrowed his eyes as he followed behind the half-elf who obviously didn't give a damn about them. The blond dwarf was a merchant. When it came to making transactions and forming connections with potential business partners, he always trusted his instincts. Right now, his instinct was telling him to follow Lux, so that was what he planned to do. Seeing Hans' action, a couple of the dwarves, which were his subordinates, followed behind him as well. The rest of the dwarves, who were not part of the merchant group, who had been kidnapped from other places, merely glanced at each other in dismay. Wandering around the kobold nest without an accurate map was useless. Also, the dwarves knew that the half-elf was right. If they tried to go to the exit at this point in time, what awaited them was an untimely death at the hands of the kobold horde that had been rubbed off the wrong way. After navigating through the underground tunnels, Lux led his friends to a smaller cavern that seemed to be used as a garbage dump by the kobolds. The rotten smell permeated the air, and it made the dwarves wrinkle their noses, but they currently had no choice in the matter. Even Hans thought that this was a good place to hide, because no kobolds would go actively looking for them in this area. The pathway leading to the garbage dump was also very narrow. It was only big enough for a single adult dwarf to walk down, and the ceiling was a head shorter than the half-elf who was forced to crouch down a little when he walked down the tunnel. After arriving at their destination, Lux used the empty storage rings that he had acquired in the prisoner's cell to store as much garbage as he could. The dwarves like Colette, who had special skills like the cleansing spell, did their best to reduce the abominable smell that permeated the cavern. Several minutes passed before the annoying smell disappeared, which made the dwarves quite thankful. Even though the cavern was smaller than the place where they had been held as prisoners, it was more than enough to house all of them. Listen, I would just like to make some rules while we are here, Lux said with a serious expression on his face. First of all, talking is not allowed. On the off chance that a kobold or a group of kobolds were to come to this place, our priority should be to kill them as fast as possible before they can raise an alarm. All the dwarves nodded their heads in agreement. They had no complaint whatsoever with the rule that Lux had stated. The second rule is that we should make as little noise as possible. Everyone should just rest for the time being. We will need every bit of strength we have in order to leave this place. The dwarves once again nodded their heads in approval. Lastly, if the worst-case scenario happens and we are discovered, everyone should stay as calm as possible, Lux stated. I am confident that we will be able to stand our ground if we work together as a cohesive unit. My skeletons will serve as the first line of defense and block the entrance of this cavern should the kobolds launch an all-out attack. If they fall, all able-bodied men will help block the entrance alongside me to ensure that they won't be able to break through our defenses. The dwarves nodded their heads for the last time and rested to conserve their strength. Lux sat beside the entrance of the cavern to use his sensitive hearing to detect anyone who was headed in their direction. Colette, Maddie, and Axel were very tired, so all of them slept, leaving the defenses to Lux. The little dwarves had developed an unwavering faith in the half-elf, especially after seeing that he had braved the danger to rescue all of them. Lux watched the children sleep with a smile on his face. Now that they had finally settled down, it was now time to make his preparations for the upcoming battle. Diablo walked towards him and handed the half-elf a black storage ring. Lux gratefully accepted it and peered at its contents. Hundreds of beast cores could be seen inside the ring, which made Lux quite happy. The main reason he had left Diablo and the skeletal fighters behind was to loot the beast cores from the kobolds' corpses. The half-elf knew that the riders of Noria weren't in the mood to pick up the cores as they bulldozed their way through the nest to save Robin. Since that was the case, Lux was more than happy to receive the free loot that was presented to him. He knew that if things went south, he could only rely on himself to save his friends. The red-headed teenager took a beast core out of the storage ring and started converting it into skill points. He would use as many cores as possible to upgrade himself, Diablo, and his skeletal fighters. That way, even if they were faced with rank 3 monsters, they would be able to hold their ground and show the kobolds that it was a futile endeavor to kill what was already dead. After looking at his stockpile, Lux decided to upgrade his partner and make him more formidable. After all, the latter would be the main fighting force in this rescue operation. Since Diablo had a special title, Firstborn, the amount of skill points he received every time Lux used a beast core to upgrade him was increased. Diablo, progress, 0/500. Lux didn't bat an eye as he used 34 rank 1 beast cores to upgrade Diablo to the next stage. Diablo, progress, 10/600. Lux decided to upgrade Diablo one more time, turning his first-named creature into a rank 2 monster. With the mythical sword Blood Moon in his possession, Diablo could now fight rank 3 monsters on even ground. Diablo, finally a worthy opponent. Our battle will be legendary. Named Skeleton. Skeleton Rider. Rating B. Mana, 10. Progress, 10/600. Health, 7,500/7,500. Mana, 1,640/1,640. Attack, 250 to 300, plus 300 damage from Blood Moon. Attack type, ethereal damage. Strength, 83, plus 1. Intelligence, 82. Vitality, 81, plus 2. Agility, 82, plus 2. Dexterity, 82, plus 2. Defense, 83, plus 200 defense. Title, Firstborn, Squad Captain, Relentless Charger. Active skills, /, heavy /, bone spear, dual EX, whirlwind / new, leap new. Passive skills, parry, tactician, improved dodge, union of man and beast, enhanced fortitude, new. Note, can you teach me how to Dougie? Diablo had managed to collect 268 beast cores from the corpses that the dwarves had left behind. 10 of them were rank 2 cores, while the rest were rank 1 beast cores. Since Lux had used a total of 74 rank 1 beast cores to upgrade Diablo twice, his stockpile was brought down to 194. Now that he had upgraded Diablo twice, it was now time for him to upgrade himself. Lux was quite happy when Diablo learned the AoE skill, Whirlwind /, which would ensure that even if the latter got surrounded on all sides, Diablo would still be able to take out his enemies as long as he wanted to. The second skill Diablo obtained was Leap. This skill allowed him to jump several meters in the air before landing in his desired location, causing a small tremor that would deal AoE physical damage in a 4-meter radius that was similar to Whirlwind /. Aside from that, the massive boost in Diablo's health points and defense made Lux feel more secure, because this meant that his partner could take more hits. This would allow Diablo extensive survivability on the battlefield. After admiring Diablo's stats for a full minute, Lux decided to upgrade his own body constitution, so he wouldn't lag behind his partner in crime. Checking his progression, Lux used 20 rank 1 beast cores to upgrade his body constitution to the next stage. Immortal Conqueror's Legacy. Rating, E+. Progress, 0/400. Ding. Congratulations. Your body constitution has been upgraded. Choose one from among these 3 options as your bonus reward. Option 1, plus 50 permanent points to Vitality. Options 2, Warcry, plus 30 physical and magical damage to you and your allies. Duration, 5 minutes. Cooldown, 10 minutes. Options 3. Guts, a skill that will allow you to withstand a lethal blow without dying. No matter how powerful the attack is, it will always leave you with 1 health point after the damage has been dealt. This time around, Lux firmly chose the skill Warcry. This was the skill he needed the most, and he would be a fool if he didn't choose the skill at this critical moment. Just as the half-elf expected, his handy-dandy special evolution EX skill kicked in and upgraded the skill that he had chosen. Skill evolution EX detected the skill Warcry. Warcry will be upgraded into Battle Cry once the requirements have been made. Since the skill is learned from your body constitution upgrade and not from a beast core, evolution requirements will be waived. Battle Cry, plus 100 physical and magical damage to you and your allies. Duration, 5 minutes. Cooldown, 10 minutes. Immortal Conqueror's Legacy. Rating D. Progress, 0/600. Bonus rewards, plus 5,000 health points, Battle Cry. Additional reward, plus 2 summon skeleton skill. You will be able to summon 4 more skeletons to fight for you. Hell yeah, Lux wanted to scream so badly, but he held his excitement in. The only skill that the rank 1 kobold monsters could use was the slash skill. Since Lux already had it and its upgrade, he didn't learn any other skills from it. Even so, he was quite happy with the overall improvement in his strength after his upgrade. Before, he could only summon 4 skeletal warriors to fight for him. With the additional plus 2 in his summon skeleton skill, he could now summon 7 skeletal fighters, which made him a one-man party. Not only that, he also gained an additional 100 stat points that he could distribute freely. However, since Lux had no intention of leaving the Leaf Village for the time being, he merely hoarded his stat points and didn't add any of them to his current stats. One more time, Lux resolved himself to upgrade himself one more time, in order to cope with any variable that might arise during their escape from the Kobold's nest. After spending 60 rank 1 beast cores from his stockpile, Lux was once again given a choice between 3 options to choose as a reward for his body constitution upgrade. Ding! Congratulations! Your body constitution has been upgraded. Choose one from among these 3 options as your bonus reward. Option 1, plus 50 permanent points to vitality. Options 2, Guts, a skill that will allow you to withstand a lethal blow without dying. No matter how powerful the attack is, it will always leave you with 1 health point after the damage has been dealt. Option 3, Parry, a passive skill that gives you a high chance to deflect a physical melee or ranged attack using your weapon. By breaking your opponent's stance, you will be able to unleash a counterattack. Lux chose the passive skill, Parry, because this was what he currently needed the most. This skill would be very helpful in the upcoming battle with the kobolds. Besides, being able to successfully parry against a multitude of attacks would be really handy, regardless who the enemy he was fighting against. Skill evolution EX detected the skill Parry. Parry will be upgraded into Expert Parry once the requirements have been made. Since the skill is learned from your body constitution upgrade and not from a beast core, evolution requirements will be waived. Expert Parry, a passive skill that gives you a higher chance to deflect a physical melee or ranged attack using your weapon. By breaking your opponent's stance, you will be able to unleash a counterattack that has a very high chance to deal critical damage to your enemy. Immortal Conqueror's Legacy. Rating D+. Progress, 0/800. Bonus rewards, plus 5,000 health points, Expert Parry. Additional reward, plus 1 summon skeleton archer skill. You will be able to summon 2 more skeleton archers to fight for you. This additional reward cannot be used at this time because the requirement to unlock summon skeleton archer has not been met. Once the skeleton archer skill becomes available, the effect of this reward will automatically activate. Conquest is not all about claiming lands and expanding your domain. True conquest is conquering the hearts of people. Once you gain their loyalty, the path to dominion will open its doors for you. Note, you're starting to look like a real novel protagonist. Lux smirked as he looked at his current stats with a satisfied look on his face. He had now surpassed Diablo's health points, which made him more confident in the upcoming battle. Not only that, his free stat points were almost 500, which was more than enough for him to step into the ranks of a Grade B apostle. The half-elf was not willing yet to take that step because he still had many things to do in Leaf Village. There were still plenty of unique quests that he hadn't taken because he was still too weak. However, right now, even without a party to help him, Lux was confident that he could bulldoze his way through the different areas to fight against the alpha beasts, which were the apex creatures in the beginner's zone. Name: Lux von Kaiser. Age: 16. Race: half-elf. Rank: none. Health: 11,960/11,960. Mana: 940/940. Strength: 46 plus 3. Intelligence: 46 plus 1. Vitality: 31. Agility: 34 plus 3. Dexterity: 31 plus 3. Free stat points available: 480. Special abilities: Skill Evolution EX, Mana Drain EX, Item Transmutation EX. Active skills: Power Shot, Dark Arrow, Fury Slash, Double Fury Slash, Battle Cry. Passive skills: Enhance Fortitude, Expert Parry. There was a famous saying back on Earth that, in the midst of every crisis, lies great opportunity. If not for the fact that Colette and the others were kidnapped by kobolds, Lux would never have the opportunity to upgrade his skills to his current level. Lux also knew this, but since it had already come to this point, all he could do was to take advantage of his current situation. They were still trapped inside the kobold's nest and waiting for rescue. Unless he, his friends, and the other dwarves could escape this deadly prison, he wouldn't be able to celebrate the rewards that he had already received from this rescue mission. I still have 114 beast cores with me, Lux thought with a smile. I think this is more than enough to upgrade the skeletal fighters to rank C, which will unlock the summon skeleton archer skill. The half-elf then started to absorb the remaining beast cores in his possession to upgrade his skeletal fighters twice. More than anything else, he was curious about the options he would be given after he unlocked the summon skeletal archer skill. If things went according to the script, then there was a high chance that Lux would have another named creature fighting on his side. Nevriel, Boreas, Helen, and the rest of the dwarves had successfully escaped the kobold's nest. Their numbers had greatly fallen after some dwarf warriors sacrificed their lives in order to buy time for everyone else to escape. Aside from Helen, Robin, and Andy, only 18 other dwarves remained, which included Nevriel and Boreas. Boreas had a pained expression on his face as he carried Helen on his shoulders. Many of his subordinates had died in this rescue mission, but he knew that if those men didn't take the initiative to hold the monster horde back by sacrificing themselves, more dwarf warriors would have died. Right now, he only had one thought in his mind. It was none other than to wait for the reinforcements from the stronghold of Noria, and then to wipe the entire kobold nest from the face of the Guellivan kingdom. After finding a safe place to hide, the dwarves tended to their injuries and sharpened their weapons. Helen looked after the unconscious Robin and Andy and thought of her big brother Lux, as well as Colette and her other friends. Please, be safe, everyone, Helen silently prayed in her heart. I hope that when the reinforcements arrive, I will once again be reunited with my friends. After the Summon Skeletal Fighter was upgraded twice, the requirements to upgrade to Summon Skeleton Archer had been reached and the option is now unlocked. Lux only had 44 Rank 1 Beast cores and 10 Rank 2 Beast cores left in his stockpile. However, he didn't regret using them one bit. What was the point of having a stockpile of Beast cores if you do not live long enough to use them? Now, time to activate this new summoning skill, Lux thought as he used 10 Rank 1 Beast cores and put his new skill to the test. Skill Evolution, EX detected a new skill. Since the skill is learned from a skill book and not from a beast core, evolution requirements will be waived. Choose which path of evolution you wish to take. Option 1. Summon 2 skeleton archers to fight for you instead of 1. Option 2. Upgrade Summon Skeleton Archer skill to summon Skeleton Hunter. Option 3. Give your first Skeleton Archer a name. Named creatures will be stronger and more intelligent than normal ones. Also, you can upgrade your named creature individually if you wish it. Lux decisively chose the third option, and a row of text materialized in front of him. You have chosen to give your first Skeleton Archer a name. Know that your first Skeleton Archer is a female. Although it is already a skeleton, giving it an appropriate name will raise its loyalty towards you. Please choose a name. Lux blinked once then twice as he read the part, which said that his first Skeleton Archer was a female. He had already thought of a cool name for his Skeleton Archer, which was Gilgamesh, but after seeing its gender, he had to scrap his plans entirely. After thinking for a few minutes, he finally settled for a name and made sure to spell it properly. You have chosen the name Ishtar as the name for your first Skeleton Archer. Is this your final answer? Yes/no. As soon as Lux clicked yes, another page appeared in his old book. This time it was a page dedicated to his new named creature, Ishtar. Ishtar, let the living beware. Named Skeleton Archer. Rating F. Mana, 10. Progress, 0 out of 100. Health, 200. Attack, 20 to 30. Attack type, ranged ice damage. Strength, 10. Intelligence, 15. Vitality, 10. Agility, 10. Dexterity, 15. Title, The Forgotten Queen. Ishtar is your second named creature and has been bestowed the title, The Forgotten Queen. This named creature has gained the ability to evolve. Forgotten Queen. Regardless of what happens in the future, this named creature will be forever loyal to you. All attacks made by Ishtar will deal ice damage. Ice damage can slow and even freeze those hit by Ishtar's deadly arrows. As someone who bore the title Forgotten Queen, Ishtar's stats increase by 50% during the night. When you use beast cores to upgrade your named creature, its effects will be increased by 50%. Note, let phantom arrows fly. Lux used 7 rank 1 beast cores to upgrade Ishtar. Thanks to the 50% points boost, Lux's beast core consumption was reduced by a good margin. However, he wasn't satisfied yet, so he used another 13 rank 1 beast cores to further boost Ishtar's stats, which raised her rating to D. After seeing her stats, Lux consumed the 10 rank 2 beast cores in his possession and an additional 7 rank 1 beast cores to upgrade Ishtar's rating to D+. Ishtar has reached the requirement needed to change a job class. Please choose your named creature's job class wisely. Compatible job classes. Skeleton Hunter. A hunter doesn't only hunt animals. Anything living or dead can be hunted. If you are foolish enough to hunt a hunter, then be prepared to become hunted as well. This skill specializes in long-range combat, as well as setting traps to ensnare their prey. They are one of the deadliest range professions around, and anyone should be wary of being marked by one of them. Job class bonus. Plus 30 dexterity. Active skill. Hunter's Mark. Place a tracker on your target. Ishtar will be able to know her target's location as long as they are within a 3-mile radius around her. Up to 3 markers can be active at any given time. Set traps. Place traps anywhere to bind, injure, or even cripple those who are unlucky enough to set foot upon them. Up to 5 traps can be active at any given time. More traps will be available on the next upgrade. Passive skill, fast reload. Skeleton Ranger. Rangers are natural protectors and have a strong empathy with wild beasts. They can wield bows, daggers, or short swords with great proficiency and are masters in both ranged and close combat fighting. They are also proficient beast tamers, which allows them to have beast companions to fight for their side. Job class bonus. Plus 15 dexterity. Plus 15 agility. Active skill. Beast taming. Tames a beast to become the Skeleton Ranger's beast companion. A maximum of 4 beasts can be tamed, but only 1 can be present at any given time. When a number of tamed beasts exceeds 4, the Skeleton Ranger will be given an option to release the beasts that they have already tamed in order to make room for another. Stealth. Blend in with the surroundings to decrease the chance of getting detected by the enemy. After a brief internal struggle, Lux decided to choose the Skeleton Hunter job class for Ishtar. No matter how good the Skeleton Ranger was, what he needed right now was a dedicated damage dealer. He already had the Diablo and the skeletal fighters to swarm the enemy with numbers. Adding a few more beast companions may bolster their troops and even increase their survivability, but the hunter's skills like set traps and hunter's mark were nothing to sneeze at. Setting traps was a no-brainer. A properly set trap could make an enemy feel a world of pain, and it would also weaken them greatly. Hunter's mark, on the other hand, would allow Ishtar to trace any target that she had set her sights on. Lux was only able to track Colette and the others because they were part of his party. If they weren't, the half-elf wouldn't have any idea that his friends had been taken by the kobolds, nor where the kobolds hid them. This was why a tracking skill was necessary. This was especially true for enemies. As long as Lux knew of their location, he could hunt them down anytime as long as they were within Ishtar's range. After the binge upgrading, Lux was only left with 20 rank 1 beast cores, but he regretted nothing. The red-headed teenager looked at Ishtar's stats and nodded his head in satisfaction. Ishtar, named Skeleton Hunter. Rating, D+. Mana, 10. Progress, 0/600. Health, 2,500/2,500. Mana, 900/900. Attack, 115 to 135. Attack type, range dice damage. Strength, 50. Intelligence, 55. Vitality, 50. Agility, 55. Dexterity, 85. Active skill, Hunter's Mark, set trap. Passive skill, equip item. Title, The Forgotten Queen. Note, screaming helps, not at all. Not bad, Lux thought as he gazed at Ishtar's stats. She now gets 15 free stat points every time she is upgraded. This is good. She will be able to catch up to Diablo easily. The half-elf knew that he had already done everything in his power to prepare himself for the tough fight ahead. His second-named creature, Ishtar, had the strength of a rank 1 monster. Aside from Ishtar, he could also summon an additional 2 skeleton archers to fight for his side. But these extra summons were just cannon fodders that would die from a single attack from kobold warriors. Even so, Lux still had uses for them. He immediately put their uses into action while waiting for their rescuers to arrive. After the dwarves escaped the kobold's nest, the majority of the kobolds returned to tend to their duties. However, when the guards of the prison returned to their posts, they noticed that all of their captives had escaped. This immediately brought a new round of alarms that could be heard through the entirety of the nest, and the expressions of Lux and the other dwarves turned serious. They didn't know why the kobolds raised the alarms. However, they all knew that this was a dangerous time for all of them. Just as the half-elf had expected, the kobolds performed a thorough search for the prisoners that had escaped from their cages. They looked in every nook and cranny of their nest, with the exception of the dump site where they threw their trash. For them, going there was a waste of time, and they didn't believe that the dwarves would go to that place to hide. An hour passed then too, followed by the third. The tension in Lux and the dwarves was at an all-time high as the hours passed by. In the end, Lux told the non-combatants to just rest, and the combatants to alternate between guarding and sleeping. The red-headed teenager had become the temporary leader of the dwarf survivors, and everyone listened to him. The grumpy dwarf, who had made things difficult for him earlier, was no exception. All of them wanted to live, and Lux saved their lives. Since they all owe him, and they had seen his capabilities, the least they could do was trust his judgment until they managed to leave the kobold's nest. Lux positioned himself near the entrance of the cavern they were staying in. He was resting, but he would wake up at a moment's notice. This was one of the techniques that his grandma Vera had taught him a year ago, to allow himself to rest, but still be able to react to any situation at any given time. Hans, the head of the dwarf merchant group, was paying close attention to the half-elf who had saved them. For some reason, he had a feeling that if he followed Lux's orders, he would be able to leave this place alive. Merchants usually followed their gut instinct, and his instincts were telling him that he had to stick with the half-elf no matter what. Because he was paying close attention to Lux, he immediately noticed when the latter opened his eyes and made a gesture to everyone, signaling them to stop whatever they were doing. This was a signal that Lux had established with them beforehand to let them know that kobolds were approaching the dump site. Earlier, He had summoned the two skeletal archers and placed their heads outside of the cavern. He placed them on the path facing the tunnels and ordered them to keep a lookout for any enemies that were headed their way. Since his connection with the skeleton archers wasn't as strong as his named creatures, he gave them an additional order to mention the number of the approaching enemy if they saw any. Right now, the skulls of his skeleton archers had just told him that 3 kobolds warriors were approaching the dump site. Since the path was narrow, the kobolds didn't have any other choice but to walk single file down the tunnel. This was the main reason why Lux chose this place. The topography would render any advantage in numbers completely useless. Lux had summoned his sword in preparation to kill the kobolds before they could alert anyone of their position. Hans also gripped his axe in order to help the red-headed teenager quickly deal with their enemies the moment they showed up. The leader of the merchant group was a grade C apostle, rank 2 monster. The only reason why he allowed himself to get captured was because he knew that he didn't stand a chance against the numbers of kobolds that had ambushed them. However, when backed to a corner, he would be willing to fight to the death if needed. He was standing near the entrance of the cavern as well, facing Lux. The two nodded their heads in unison as they held the weapons in their hands firmly. When the first kobold entered the cavern, Lux immediately summoned Diablo behind the 3 kobold warriors, so they would have nowhere to run. Diablo stabbed the back of the kobold that was right in front of him, piercing through its chest, killing it in one hit. Hans hacked his axe at the neck of the kobold that had just entered the cavern and decapitated it in one strike. Lux, on the other hand, activated his skill, Double Fury Slash, dealing critical damage and killing the second kobold before it could even shout for help. Lux, Diablo, and Hans hurriedly dragged the dead monsters inside the cavern so that they wouldn't be easily discovered. The half-elf didn't rule out the fact that they might have been sent here by their superiors to check if their prisoners were hiding inside the dump site. Diablo took out the 3 beast cores from the kobolds' chests and presented them to his master, who took them without another word. Hans didn't have any complaints because, for him, rank 1 beast cores were useless. He would not fight Lux over them and ruin the bigger picture. If these are scouts, then we can expect that their superior will send some other kobolds to look for their whereabouts, Hans said. Lux nodded because he was also thinking of the same thing. If we get lucky, they will completely forget about this matter and only remember it in a few hours. Hans smiled. He knew that what the red-headed teenager was saying was only wishful thinking, but he also hoped that it was the case. Unfortunately, an hour later, the skeleton archers once again issued a warning, and this time around, they said that there were a dozen kobold warriors headed in their direction, with one of them being a kobold leader, which was a rank 2 monster. When Lux relayed this information to Hans and his subordinates, all of their expressions became serious. They knew that they would have to kill these kobolds as fast as they could and prevent them from leaving the place alive. Aside from Diablo, Hans was the strongest warrior in their group. The dwarf also had 6 subordinates under his command, who were all grade D apostles, rank 1 monster. All of them were willing to fight for their survival, but Lux told them that they didn't have to fight. This perplexed the dwarves, which made them think that the half-elf had given up all hope. However, when they saw Lux summon Diablo and 7 skeleton warriors, they immediately understood why he asked them to stand down. Right now, every dwarf was indispensable. If they died fighting against the kobolds, it would be one less fighter on their side. However, the skeletons were different. As long as Lux had mana, he could summon them over and over again, and they were not afraid of dying. All the other dwarves had backed away to the very corner of the cavern, so that they wouldn't be involved in the fighting. Colette had asked Lux to let them join the fight, but the half-elf rejected their proposal. Lux only told the adorable little dwarf to protect the non-combatants and ensure that no kobolds would harm them. Everyone became tense when the sounds of footsteps reached their ears. The plan was relatively simple and had no room for error. The moment the first kobold entered the cavern, Hans immediately decapitated it, while Diablo charged and stabbed the kobold behind it. The kobold leader was in the middle of the formation, so all it could do was bark orders for those behind it to retreat. However, who was Lux? Naturally, he already expected that this was going to happen. So he had placed a key figure at the back of the tunnel, which was none other than Ishtar. Lux's second-named creature had a peculiar ability. She was able to disassemble her body and scatter her body parts to where she wanted them to be. Ishtar was also the one that warned Lux that there was a rank 2 monster amidst the group of kobolds. As soon as the fight began, the skeleton hunter assembled her body parts once again and placed traps in front of her. After doing that, she immediately began shooting her arrows into the rear of the kobold formation, trapping them in a pincer attack. Diablo had a strength equivalent to a rank 3 monster because of the mythical weapon, Blood Moon. With this powerful weapon in hand, Diablo made short work of the kobolds and killed the kobold leader without mercy. By the time the battle was over, Diablo had killed 6, Isther killed 7, and Hans killed 1. Just like last time, they dragged the dead bodies inside the cave, took their beast cores, and incinerated them with fire magic. The smell of burning flesh permeated the room, but with the cleansing magic, the smell disappeared completely. Now that they had killed the scouting party, Lux, Hans, and the dwarves knew that they were now only on borrowed time. They couldn't leave their hiding spot because it was the only place they could defend themselves with the numbers they currently had. Lux gazed at everyone with a serious expression. The next time the kobolds appear here, we will all be fighting for our lives. I hope that when that time comes, all of you will do your best to remain calm and listen to my orders. Don't worry. No matter how many of them come, I am confident that we will be able to hold them back. The tunnel only allows one person at a time to pass through it. Even if there were thousands of them, they will have no choice but to go down this one path. As long as we block this one entrance, they will not be able to overwhelm us with numbers. Everyone nodded their heads in agreement. After hearing Lux's strategy, all of them felt a little better. They had seen how strong the skeletons were, so they believed that they would be able to hold the kobolds at bay no matter what. Technically, they weren't wrong. However, they had forgotten one thing. Kobolds may not be the smartest monsters around, but they were not stupid. Because of this, Lux and the other dwarves didn't remember that even a well-thought-out plan could go terribly wrong if they did not understand the true nature of their enemies. This was a lesson that the red-headed teenager would learn the hard way.